Hey guys, welcome back. This is Kakarot ZU all-time favorite. Today we are gonna see what if Goku was an ancient weapon part 3. So let's move on to the video. Goku was getting tired of dreaming. It never seemed to do him any good. And why had he just gone ahead and listened to some stupid talking cat and drink anything without first truly knowing what was in that bottle? For all he knew, Karin had actually found a way to poison him, and now Goku was in hell. Only the memory of what so many of his other dreams felt like gave the alien boy peace of mind to realize that he was not, in fact, dead though. Instead, the world champion deduced that Karin's sacred water merely overloaded his system with its potency, and his body collapsed as a result. So then, it's only a matter of time before I'm awake again, Goku surmised, and then I'll begin my training with that Maudi feline. Forced to accept this as fact, the young martial artist continued to walk the dark void of his mind in an aimless trek. It had been quite some time since his last session of meditation, and it showed in the way Goku found it difficult to pull forth memories from his last transformation, though he blamed a bit of that on those strange blackouts as well. Instead, the things that came vividly to mind were those images of the man he assumed to be his father, and the man's demise at the hands of who Goku assumed was Frieza. How he held such memories Goku couldn't even begin to fathom, but he kept himself trained on his father's final moments for quite a while, tracing over every inch of the man and his battle-worn appearance, from the scar on his cheek to the tattered armor, and even the man's blood-soaked bandana. He stared and stared, ultimately unsure of just what it was he was looking for, before allowing his gaze to travel over to Frieza. Strangely enough, unlike the last time he had the dream, the horned demon was near impossible to see beyond a hazy blob surrounded by the endless vacuum of space. Goku attributed this to the lucidity of this particular introspection, and sucked his teeth before willing the images away. These apparent memories did nothing for him, served no purpose, so why did they settle so deeply in the back of his mind? What was he missing? Such wonders began to prick at the boy's mind, agitating Goku with their taunting presence, until finally he shut the memory away with a snarl. Striding through the void, Earth's world champion stalked his own mind with clenched fists until stumbling upon a most peculiar sight: a cave. It seemed so out of place at first, but when Goku gave another look he realized that his endless void had vanished to be replaced by a barren wasteland littered with rocky outcrops and sky-high stony structures. The ground was red and muddy, almost clay-like in its constancy, dotted by pathetic attempts at floral life that better resembled dying grass. Up above, the sky was awash with violet hues bleeding into crimson clouds. 2 suns orbited the sky as well, telling Goku that he was no longer on Earth. And yet this did not feel like a memory. There was no tingle at the back of his neck, and the hairs along Goku's muscled arms did not raise. Then is this my mind? Is this what happens when I don't meditate? This is my mindscape? Gohan had taught him about mindscapes before his death, had told Goku about their importance and how to create one that left his mind fully focused when during battle, but the boy had never actually attempted to make one. Even during his sessions on Kame Island, Goku's main objective was to try and recapture the power of his ape form, as well as settle the blood-lusting inner beast who nearly killed Krillin. So to actually see what his mind looked like before his eyes was a bit surreal to the young fighter, though he was also a bit unimpressed, figuring that this was his subconscious instinct attempting to bridge the gap between he and his home world. Goku sighed through his nose before turning to walk away. His past was just that for the time being. With training to undergo, Goku wanted no distractions. The mystery of his birth as well as the inner mechanics of his power would have to be put aside until this King Piccolo was dealt with, and then, the boy could devote himself once more to discovering the truth about himself. Or so he thought. Barely 2 steps were taken before a tremendous weight bore down on Goku's entire body, forcing him to his hands and knees as he quickly found himself struggling to breath. Never had the young fighter ever experienced a pressure, a power, like this before. It was raw, primal, and spoke of a force similar to a planet-wide typhoon. Even as he pushed with all his might, Goku found that he wasn't able to bring himself back to his feet, and even moments later, when the surge suddenly calmed, he felt a furious anger bubbling up inside at being brought so low. On tired limbs, Goku stood to full height again, his face a mask of pinched brow and tight jaw as he stared into the dark abyss that was the cave standing before him. Clearly, whatever his mind wanted the martial artist to meet was hidden away within the depths of that cavern. Fine then, he thought with a snarl, let us see just what sort of monster lives within. It was with sure steps and a chin pointed towards the sky that the alien fighter strode forward and into the mouth of that mental darkness. Met by a rush of cold and the stench of death, Earth's martial arts champion choked back the gagging sensation in his throat as his enhanced sense of smell was assaulted by the hideous odor of rotting corpses. Clearly, this cave was a place within his mind that spoke to the animal inside, to the transformed state. And so, Goku walked for what felt like an eternity through darkness and gut-wrenching nausea, before finally being bathed in a pale, silvery glow as he entered what could only be the very center of the cave. What he found, however, was enough to nearly give the young teen a heart attack. Because, standing there seemingly bathing in the moonlight was himself. Only, this twisted reflection was garbed in a brown, fur pelt and boots, his tail wrapped tightly around the waist. Dark, spiky hair was unkempt while muscles bulged just that much more strongly than what Goku saw in the mirror. This reflection had their eyes closed, yet they shifted underneath their lids as elongated canines shuffled over the other boy's lower lip. It was easy to spot the hint of claws tapering off from his fingertips with the way he seemed to enjoy flexing them, yet one could easily make out that this motion wasn't one of stress but contentment. This reflection enjoyed being under the full moon. Goku found himself lost as to what he was supposed to do, supposed to say, as he gazed upon this odd mental image of himself. Luckily, it seemed, he didn't need to. The reflection's voice was thicker though, carried more of a rumble to it, as though it carried around a mouthful of gravel. I was wondering when we'd finally meet. I've been waiting for so long. I hoped, after fighting that skinny weakling, that we might have the chance to talk, but your friend, they got in the way. But now, Goku, it's just you and me. And who are you exactly? What happened to me at the tournament, and against Dr. Gero? What purpose do you serve, if any, that has you rooted here inside my mind? Your mind? No, Goku, this is our mind. I am you. I am where you pull your amazing strength from. I am why you can take the beatings you do and get back up stronger than ever. I am the reason we are the strongest fighter on this pathetic ball of mud. Then where were you while I was fighting Dao? Why did he defeat me? Because you shut me out. The roar echoed throughout the cave, and Goku felt that same weight from before beginning to press down on him again, only this time he tried harder to fight it to not be seen kneeling before this stranger. As he struggled though, the twisted reflection finally dropped his head from staring at the open ceiling, letting the shaggy bangs of his already wild hair shadow the thing's face before turning to look at Goku with newly opened eyes. Gold, instead of black, with a single circle of kohl settled dead center. These were the eyes that met Goku's own wary facade with a glinting stare of bitterness. The tail that had once been around the reflection's waist now bristled as it waved through the air like an agitated snake, and when next he spoke, it was as though venom burned the very tip of his tongue. Back then, on that old fool's island, you awoke me from my slumber. You tapped into your true power. But then, all because some dried-up fossil threatens not to train you, you shove me back into a box and try to forget about me. While I am grateful to the one with blue hair for showing you a world that helped you find me, they have clearly made you soft, Goku. Listen, I may not fully understand what's going on here, but one thing's for sure: stop calling me Goku. Just because I let Bulma call me that, doesn't mean some weird shadow of myself is gonna do it too. My name is. Your name, the reflection sneered, is Goku. I am Kakarot. You, who have forgotten himself, have no right to carry that name any longer. You, who have become content with being second best and running around on silly little adventures, simply because something pretty bats their eyes at you, has no right to carry the title of a warrior. The GI-clad boy's temper was starting to get the best of him, and he stepped forward in challenge as he matched the nasty look being aimed at him. And what makes you so much of an expert? Anytime you come around, I black out. So tell me, why would I want you anywhere other than locked away in here so that I could win my fights? You say that you're supposed to be the real Kakarot, that I've forgotten myself. Well, maybe that's a good thing. He stopped, eyes widening to the size of baseballs as those words sunk in, and as his reflection's own face shifted into a smug mask, Goku realized that what the mental image has been saying was right. He'd gone soft. You see now, the reflection prodded, even if your goal is never to destroy this world, even if you choose one of these weaklings to sire your offspring, your true nature should never be ignored. You are different, and you must remember that. Accept it. You hold your nose in the air, but do not know why. Your pride as a warrior has waned. You've become content with squandering your true potential to sit around with weak fools. So then what would you suggest? Should I simply throw Bulma away? There was a snort from the doppelganger. By this point, that would simply destroy us, destroy you. No, what I suggest is to stop denying who you truly are, to re-embrace all that makes you truly special. A single hand, raised to shake, now settled between the two monkey-tailed boys. Onyx's eyes shifted between it and the glowing amber orbs of their owner's reflection. A wary look settled over Goku's face. "So, what? I just need to take your hand then. Seems a bit simplistic, doesn't it?" The mental construct chuckled, "but it's simply a visual of you opening up to me and accepting this part of yourself again after so long. I'm not too sure how it'll feel, since I don't know anything you don't, but once you reawaken I'm sure you'll be interested in finding out just how much more powerful you've become." "Oh," Goku countered with a grin, "so sure are you that I'll agree? How do I know this isn't really just a trap by that fat cat? Heh, because your nose is too good for such a silly trick, you'd never be caught by something so human. That did it." A slick, devilish grin found a home on the alien warrior's face as he went to clasp hands with the more wild-looking copy standing inches in front of him. There was a rush, like a force of fresh air being pumped into the teen's lungs, before he watched the doppelganger's eyes begin to glow. Brighter and more luminescent until finally there was no choice but to look away, and then, he awoke. It felt like hours, but Korin would find that he only needed to wait a half hour before his newest student reawoke from his impromptu slumber. Yet, even before Kakarot opened his eyes, Korin could feel that something had changed about him. The cloud that swirled around his aura had settled, leaving a smooth flow of violet in its wake, cold, certain, proud. It was an aura Korin had no real experience reading, so it was difficult to tell what sort of person would be in possession of such an energy, but knowing that it belonged to a Silang of all things was enough to make the feline wary. HNGRH, that single groan signaled Kakarot's return to the land of the living, and with it came a wave of power the likes of which Korin would have once believed impossible for any living thing so small. The sheer presence of so much power, its stifling thickness as it layered over the air like a blanket, furry paws were forced to tighten around their owner's staff just to keep the cat from falling on his face. Yet, before Korin could swear his bones were about to break, it all vanished, leaving him panting as though in heat as the grower of senzu beans' knees wobbled. What in the damn it all?" Kakarot hissed as he pushed himself up onto his palms. "I guess one side effect is a throbbing headache, though I suppose I should have seen that coming." Instantly Korin could tell something else was different. Kakarot's voice. It was lower, a bit more guttural, and rumbled a bit reminiscent of a brewing storm. And as narrowed eyes watched, they noticed how the boy even seemed to move differently, seamless, smooth. Almost like watching a jungle cat slink through tall grass, only, this time Korin felt the creeping vines of fear beginning to make their way through his system as he continued to watch this predator. "So then," Korin jumped at the sudden address, "you mentioned before I drank that nectar that we begin my training once I drained the bottle. As you can see, the sacred water has been drank, and now I stand here ready to begin, so don't you think we should get started? I'm sure you don't want this King Piccolo to destroy too much of the earth before I'm ready to face him, The cocky attitude was still there too, Korin mused as he agreed in a disgruntled manner, but now it seemed layered with a new self-assurance that hadn't been present before, though this only sharpened the cat's already negative opinion of the boy. But he was right, there wasn't enough time to dwell on such thoughts when Piccolo was already so far ahead of them and with such a devious plan in mind as told to him by Kami. It wasn't what the cat wanted. He wished for more time so as to meditate on Kakarot and just what might become of the boy if he should actually defeat the Demon King, but Piccolo's defeat needed to come sooner rather than later, and such a luxury just could not be taken. So instead, "Very well then, if you feel you're truly ready, then we'll begin immediately, follow me." Together the pair moved towards the center of Korin's tower where, for the first time, Kakarot noticed a raised platform came up from the tiled floor. It didn't look like much, even with how shiny the copper looked, yet as he stepped closer the alien boy began to feel a tug at the back of his navel. "We're going to do all of my training on this rise? It's not much of an arena, even with us being so small. I doubt we have much room to move, cat. Then I guess it's a good thing that's not what we'll be doing. Instead, this platform is going to take us to somewhere new, somewhere we don't need to worry about anyone on Earth feeling worried about your power. No, instead we'll be going to a special place known as the Dead Zone." Kakarot's eyebrows pinched together even as he stepped onto the platform, opposite Korin, and waited to see just how their transport would work. What sort of name is that? Sounds more like a child's version of hell rather than a training spot for a warrior. He watched the cat tap his staff 3 times, and then a flash of light similar to the one that awoke Kakarot saw them suddenly surrounded not by Korin's tower, but a barren wasteland devoid of any hope to sustain life. Dead trees dotted the dry, clay-like earth while black clouds hung like smoke over a blood-red sky. Kakarot found he couldn't even hear the crickets chittering in the distance. This is the dead zone, a place bordering the mortal plane and other world. Here is where Kami sends the souls of Earthlings who require time to bleed out their negative feelings before taking them to King Yema for sentencing, though only if he first believes they deserve such a chance, so we'll be pretty undisturbed here. Korin moved off the platform then, silently motioning for Kakarot to follow, before the two stood facing one another a few feet away. Now then, the feline announced, your training will prioritize both your speed as well as your reaction time, while carrying a secondary purpose of helping to harness that tremendous power Kami seems to be relying on so heavily. Fighting technique as well as raw strength are not my forte, so any such advancements you hope to make will need to be done on your own time. So about what I was expecting then. Kakarot sucked at his teeth. Considering your shape and stature, practical martial arts is a bit beyond you, isn't it? Very well then, if you are the best Earth's Guardian has to offer for my training, then let us get on with it. What am I going to be doing first? The talking cat's answer was a single word, though one Kakarot had silently been hoping for since he'd awoken. His power had indeed been noticeably increased, yet it was difficult to keep a lid on so as not to have it pouring out in a mass tidal wave. Its force had very nearly even crushed the alien's own heart with the amount of pressure that bore down on Kakarot as he opened his eyes. So, being told that their training would begin with meditation, he allowed a very dense weight to lift from his shoulders. He would learn to control this power. He would make it his own, and then, he would defeat King Piccolo to become the undisputed power of planet Earth. All would come to know the name Kakarot and, either through fear or respect, accept him as their true ruler. A month. Dao hadn't sent word back in over a month. As Tien worked furiously through a kata, he could sense his master's fury even as Shen stayed locked away inside the study, the middle-aged master having begun combing through every contact he had in order to find his wayward brother. After the man had left to collect on his late payment, both of them believed he'd be back within that same day, and even after the first 2 days it was believed Dao merely needed to track down his runaway benefactor before breaking their arm, retrieving his money and killing them, before finally returning home. A week later, Tien began to wonder if perhaps his master's kin had found himself a more dangerous foe than he'd been expecting and would be coming back a bit late. It was rare, but it happened before. But then 1 week turned into 3, before becoming 7, and now Shen's negative feelings weighed down all of the Crane House students. Found it difficult to even enter the dojo with how heavy their master's rage. Unable to contact Dao, and with no true knowledge of what truly became of the man, the Crane Style's creator began to grow sour. He snapped at the smallest thing, and any student who made a mistake was punished severely, to the point some of them began to whisper of quitting if things got any worse. Only Tien understood his teacher's predicament, knew about the true connection Dao shared with the Crane Hermit, since he'd been with them since he was a young boy. It was this past, memories of being taken in when all hope seemed lost and his village burned around him, that sowed the seed of rage within Tien's own heart. Dao had been as much a father to the bald martial artist as Master Shen, and even went so far as to be the first of the two to tell him about the Dodon Ray after noticing Tien's vast potential. The young, prodigious teen understood the man's distaste for the Tenkaichi Budokai, which made him respect Dao all the more when he would spend any time at all helping him to prepare, even if it was under duress. So to think, even for a moment, that someone may have very well killed Dao, Tien swore on his life, as a powerful beam of yellow energy shot from his fingertip and erased a training dummy from existence, that if something bad happened to his new family, then whoever was responsible would pay with their life. Bulma sighed, miserable, even as she worked on the rejuvenation tank that had become the Genius Beauty's most important project after Goku's near-death experience almost 6 months ago. However, thinking about the boy with the monkey tail only caused the girl to let out another sigh. 6 months. She hadn't seen or heard from Goku in 6 months. There was a brief time, thanks to a telepathic link forged through Master Korin, that she and the boy had been able to speak and say their goodbyes, but even then it was hard for Bulma because she hadn't physically be able to see Goku, let alone give the alien fighter a hug before being left with Lapis and Lazuli. Yet, as she went back to trying to reverse engineer the power of the Senzu Bean into liquid form, Capsule Core, Eris couldn't help but recall just how different Goku had sounded over the mental conversation. It was almost as if he'd been a different person. But then, maybe it's just because that's the first time I've ever heard his voice through a telepathic talk before, Bulma rationalized, like hearing someone over the phone rather than in person. But even still, the blue-haired inventor couldn't help wondering how much longer it would be before she'd get to see her best friend again, or how he'd change while under the tutelage of this Master Korin, who Goku revealed was nothing more than a talking cat with a walking stick. A loud crash barely registered in Bulma's mind as she made this recollection, and this time the huff was one of annoyance, as Lapis has clearly decided to drop his weighted vest on the floor again rather than put away like she and his sister constantly reminded him to do. Having the twins around wasn't all bad, however, as it gave Bulma another girl around the house besides her ditzy mother to talk to, and Lapis turned out to be a big help when it came to the heavy lifting Bulma's father could no longer do without struggle. Although, sometimes, Lazuli came off as a bit guarded when they'd be at the dinner table in the morning or even later on at night right before bed, almost like she were hiding something from her. Shaking off those thoughts though, Bulma turned her attention back to the computer screen that was currently analyzing the bin she'd received from Borat after they'd been gifted more of the magic medicine during winter. She'd put together the actual machine, modeling it after the cloning pod she'd seen in a couple sci-fi movies growing up, and now simply needed to transform the senzu into a serum that could be reproduced en masse in case something horrible happened to Goku, or either of the twins, again. Bulma was done being helpless, and planned to be more than capable of being there for the wild-haired martial arts champion with whatever he needed. Yet even as her crystal blue eyes attempted to concentrate on the numbers being run through the computer simulation, a traitor's thought that had begun to rear its dangerous head lately made itself known. It was one Bulma fought with on a near-nightly basis, a single question that warped the girl's dreams and clouded her mind during the day until sometimes there was nothing to do for it but for Bulma to lock herself in her room and attempt that meditation stuff Yamcha used to yammer on about. It worked, sometimes, although others it simply made the problem worse. At those instances, Goku would return to her, as if like a god descending from the clouds. He'd have hit a growth spurt, he'd be taller than her, with no more puppy fat to hide that strong jaw she'd noticed him developing after the tournament and muscles that pressed firmly against the top of the alien man's GI. Such dreams always ended with a single, soul-burning kiss, but they always left behind that one traitor's question that seemed stuck in the back of Bulma's mind now forever. What if, when he returns, what Goku wants is you? Even as he stared at them, settled there on the ground neatly in a circle, Piccolo still found it surreal to know that in only a single year he'd actually managed to get a hold of all 7 Dragon Balls, that now, in mere moments, his youth would be restored to him. Off to the side, his human pet stood nervously bouncing from foot to foot, watching anxiously for any sign that her life may now be forfeit. Smart girl, the wicked demon chuckled internally, but I think I'll keep her, at least for a while. After all, sooner or later, one of his future children might be in need of snack. Thinking of what a grand army he would soon have again brought Piccolo's focus back to the wish-granting orbs nestled in the grass, and he once more turned to Mai and asked if what she'd told him earlier was correct. I simply say the incantation, and Shenron appears? That's right, just call for him like I told you, and you'll soon be back to full strength my lord. The Scourge scanned over the trembling young woman with a critical eye. You'd better hope they're the right words then, girl, or you'll pay dearly for deceiving me. Sure that Mai was now too stricken by fear to attempt fleeing from him, Piccolo allowed his yellow gaze to swivel back onto the orange balls decorated by stars. A feeling of raw anticipation filled the giant green monster as memories of the past flashed through his mind. Power, the smell of fear, the feeling of invincibility. Soon, such euphoric wonders would be his to savor, and with no foolish old man to seal him away again, the era of oblivion would go completely uncontested. Though, best to be safe than sorry, Piccolo admonished, and my first order of business will be to eradicate the Martial Arts Society from the face of the planet. But first, it is time. Arise, Shenron. Come forth, and grant my wish, he who has gathered the 7 Dragon Balls. At first, it seemed as though the incantation hadn't worked, and the short-tempered Scourge was nearly ready to turn around so as to strike Mai from the world for wasting his time, when suddenly all 7 balls began to glow. It was a brilliant, luminescent orange that made the orbs appear to be filled with fire from the underworld, one that was soon joined by sparks of scorching electricity. Thunder boomed, drawing attention towards the sky, and both master and slave watched as thick, black clouds swallowed up all rays of light that once filled the morning sky. Streaks of lightning struck true to the earth, and a light rain began to descend upon the land as gusts of heavy wind created small cyclones that scattered leaves from the treetops and frightened even the most diligent of birds from their nests. Animals scattered, and their cries molded together to create a symphony of fright that Piccolo found delightful, while Mai dropped to her knees wearing a mask of discontent and worry. This was different from before. When Pilaf had summoned the dragon, there had been dark clouds, yes, but these blotted out all light and cast the world in a blanket of shadow that felt unnatural. The wind had whipped, but only like that of a slight storm, nothing strong enough to form tornadoes, and there had been no terrible thunder and lightning. As ice-cold rain dropped from the sky in a depressing drizzle, slowly soaking the former military commander to the bone, Mai felt the frigid hand of fear grip at her heart and struggled to breath past what such an ominous scene might mean. Though, before those thoughts could overwhelm the young woman, a single bolt of lightning came crashing down in the center of the dragon balls, or rather, it rose out from within before spiraling among the pitch-black clouds and taking the shape of a mighty dragon. Soon, the outer crust of blinding yellow aura faded, and Shenron could be seen floating among the storm in all of his magnificent glory. Yet as Piccolo gazed upon the legendary serpent with awe and excitement, Mai continued to feel her worries compound as she noticed two very noticeable changes about the wish-granting reptile he'd grown, nearly twice the size as before, and she could see a dark tint to the edge of Shenron's once emerald scales. What in the world is going on? She choked mentally, as there was nothing in the legends about this sort of change. It was, honestly, quite terrifying, and Mai was beginning to wonder if perhaps the Dragon Balls may not be as much a gift from the heavens as people seem to believe. And as he spoke, that dreadful curiosity took the form of a cold shiver trailing the young woman's spine. "You who have summoned me, speak, so that I may grant you any one wish." There was a bit of a hiss to the eternal dragon's speech, now one only noticeable if one had heard him speak before. Though it could be found by the shivering, wet soldier, and the echo of such a noise nearly made Mai want to hurl. But not Piccolo. No, the Demon King only grinned wickedly as he stared up at the creature who would be, in a sense, his salvation. Salivating at the mouth, drool gleaming as it dribbled from his fangs, Piccolo shouted loud and clear as his dark heart thundered behind the monster's chest. I wish to be made young again. Restore my youth and power, return to me what time has stolen. Can you do this?" The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity, broken only by the crashing of lightning or booming of thunder, and for the second time King Piccolo began to wonder if his hopes had been dashed as rage slowly swelled within him. Had that fool Kami not made the balls as powerful as Piccolo imagined, or was there perhaps a certain way wishes must be made? It was just as the Demon King was contemplating offering the human fleshbag's corpse to the dragon, that Shenron's voice echoed across the empty plains once more. And as he spoke, the elderly abomination's entire body filled with malicious glee. "As you wish." Large, crimson eyes glowed for a moment, and the storm's intensity picked up right before another flash of lightning came down to strike at Piccolo directly. Only, instead of vaporizing the fiend like Mai secretly hoped, this blast energized the Demon King. Graha! Immediately King Piccolo felt the changes. His muscles tightened, skin pulled itself back together. The aches that plagued him all year were soon vanishing without a trace as the demon's spine straightened him out to a full height of over 8 feet tall. Yellow eyes brightened and fangs gleamed as Piccolo's large, now muscular, frame strained against the stitching of his uniform. Yet, as grand as such a feeling was, what the Scourge felt the most excited for was the return of his power. Raw, primal, uninhibited, the well filled swiftly before overflowing, and Piccolo found himself laughing maniacally as an aura of bloody crimson tinted by a deathly black began to surround him like a flame. With a final, triumphant roar, the transformation was complete, and King Piccolo stood tall and in his prime once more. "Your wish has been granted. Now, I must go." A devilish smirk found its way to Piccolo's youthful face as he sent the eternal dragon a curious leer. In moments, the power he needed was gathered firmly in a single palm, and the Demon King did indeed feel the drain one bit. Flexing his claws, King Piccolo told the dragon, "Oh yes, of course, but before you do there's just one last thing I need. Rawa!" The bright, molten yellow beam flashed for mere seconds through the sky before colliding with Shenron, and only Mai was there to witness as Earth's eternal dragon was turned to ashes in an instant. Shenron's pained, enraged cries echoed throughout the land as the skies returned to normal and all signs that a wish had been granted disappeared into the wind, the dragon balls themselves quickly turning to stone. With the deed done, Piccolo breathed a sigh of silent relief, before turning his attention onto the human woman cowering a mere few feet away. "You have served me well, human, so your life shall be spared under the condition that it now belongs to me. As such, my next task for you is to compile a list of the martial arts community for me. Is that understood?" The young woman didn't even need to think as she answered, "Why yes, your eminence, as why you command." "I'll leave, or at your word." "Good, then go now, and do try to be quick about it." Giving a shaky nod, Mai pulled out her capsules and selected the fastest jet copter she could afford, before clicking the trigger and tossing it. A colorful puff of smoke shrouded the vehicle for only a moment, before the girl quickly climbed aboard the silver hunk of metal. Turning only once, the blue-eyed beauty asked her master what he now had planned. The demon's answer, though, left a cold shiver running down the young woman's spine her entire ride to Papaya Island. "I'll just be getting reacquainted with the world." Piccolo wasn't he the only devious fiend with a nefarious agenda, however Tien of the Crane School was bubbling with vengeance as well. The bald youth's two onyx black eyes stared hatefully at the front gate to Capsule Corporation's home base, home of the Briefs family. Home to his target, a swift, yet vicious, interrogation of Jingle Village's chief had led the teen here earlier in the year, but the past 12 months had been spent in harsh training in preparation for taking down the one who proved themselves even stronger than mercenary Dao. Not even the odd, short storm from moments before had stopped Tien's journey, and now, champion, it's your turn. Another set of the world's beautiful, blue eyes could be found closed in meditation, as leisurely took steady breaths of the floral air around her. Blocking out the sounds of her brother as he worked through a kata he'd found on the internet, the blonde attempted to delve deep within herself and find the power to use energy techniques like Goku and Jackie Chun. After witnessing just how powerful the Kamehameha and even the Dodone Ray were, leisurely realized that, if she truly hoped to stay by Goku's side, then she herself would need to harness that same energy and make it her own. The task proved difficult, however, especially with how often the blonde beauty's thoughts would stray to thinking about the monkey-tailed world champion. Even now leisurely could feel the blush starting to stain her cheeks as she recalled the night before, her only hope being that Bulma didn't hear her cries of passion. However, such wonders were pushed aside at the sound of an explosion, followed swiftly by the rumbling of Capsule Corp grounds. What in the... "Sis, you all right?" "I am," leisurely answered as she dusted herself off, "but we need to hurry and find Bulma." That didn't feel like any earthquake I've ever experienced. Sprinting from the garden, the twins ran at full speed through the large, empty house in search of their friend, yet stopped dead at the fierce shout that soon rang throughout the building. The owner's voice was firm and full of rage, and a weight seemed to settle over Lapis and leisurely from it simply carrying through the air, but it was what the voice said that truly tightened their cause. "Kakarot! Where are you?" Immediately, Lapis' eyes sharpened with focus and his arm went straight across Leisurely's chest, before the pair began a much slower trek, this time in the direction of that voice. Leisurely's own face was twisted into a mask of curious indignation, as she wondered who could be looking for her crush in such an uncivilized manner. The answer? A bald young man, who looked to be about Bulma's age, if not a little older, standing in the destroyed entrance to Capsule Corporation. His attire mirrored that of Dao's, though the colors were an emerald green, trimmed by a bloody red, and the kanji for vengeance stitched over the breast. A look of pure fury was settled over the guy's face, and his fists were clenched so tight that Lapis was sure he could hear the knuckles pop from where he and his sister were ducked away. Before anything more could be gleaned from their intruder's appearance, though, he opened his mouth wide and yelled once more, "Kakarot, you coward, show yourself at once. It is time for you to pay for your crimes. The only one paying around here is you, Buster," Bulma hissed as she finally came storming into the room. "Look at what you did to my front door." "A paltry offense," the stranger scoffed, "when compared to the wrong I have come to make right. Now, tell me where Kakarot is hiding. I will not ask nicely a second time." Bulma's blue eyes widened for a moment, her hand still on her hips, before a snort rippled through the air and the young woman pinched the bridge of her nose. "So, what, are you someone he put the smack down on, and now you want a rematch? Cammy above, that little punk, he goes off to train and leaves me to clean up his mess, huh? Kakarot, isn't he here? Where is he, then? Surely you must know. What am I, his keeper? As that coward's lover, I'm sure he told you before departing." The female genius' pretty face erupted into a fierce blush at the accusation, though a thrill tingled at the base of her neck at the thought some stranger already assumed she and Goku were lovers. However, it was the reminder that there was, indeed, a stranger in her home searching for the aforementioned alien that drew Bulma's ire back to the forefront of her expression. Even if he did tell me, what makes you think I'd tell a creep like you? Besides, if you couldn't beat the kid a year ago, you're definitely not gonna be a match for him. Now go home and tell your parents that they owe me for the door you destroyed. Tien felt his whole body fill with rage then, an aura flared around the martial artist as his power rose. Staring coldly at the heiress, he grit his teeth and began to move towards her. "I have no family. Kakarot stole them from me. So now, I'm going to do the same to him." Bulma's anger was quickly replaced by fear, as her strength lay in science and machines, and was about to turn and try to run for her gun when Lapis and Lazuli stepped out from behind the corner of the hall. "Sorry," the younger boy snapped, "but we can't really allow that. If you want her, you'll have to go through us first," his sister continued. "And we won't be making it easy." The twins finished together. Tien allowed himself to be drawn away from the trembling girl before him, and instead stared down the pair of fighters who now challenged the Crane School prodigy. A vicious smirk made its way onto the bald youth's face then, and as he watched the twins carefully, grew interested when he saw them step one behind the other. "Bulma, run," Lapis ordered. "We'll hold him off as long as possible, but you need to get away from here." "Alright, please be careful you two, nobody's going anywhere," Tien growled, flexing his fingers. "Besides, you'll both be dead long before the bitch can get too far, so what's the point? I guess we'll just have to see about that." Lapis and Lazuli screamed back, before dashing forward. Even after seeing it, Tien couldn't help trying to keep his focus after the pair split off and came at him from two sides. The blonde went low, trying to sweep his legs, while her brother tried for an aerial kick, but a lift of the leg and a single forearm stopped both attempts, and Tien returned fire by throwing Lapis across the room by the ankle. Lazuli found herself rolling backwards to avoid being knocked in the head by her foe's pivot kick, before pushing off the rug to try and land a straight shot to their stomach. He parried it, but the blonde managed to duck under the knife strike aimed at her throat before a knee to the stomach sent Lazuli flying back into the wall. Tien didn't get to rest though, as Lapis had returned to his feet and went for a full body tackle, before attempting to put the bald martial artist into an arm bar. "Nice try," Tien sneered, before ripping his arm free and bringing his elbow down hard. "Gaha, Lapis!" Lazuli scrambled to her feet despite the pain she'd been feeling, and barreled into she and her brother's opponent as he rolled to his feet, before sending a full-force punch down to crush the young man's nose. Only, the attack never made it, as Tien sent the blonde rocketing away with a burst of his aura before rolling back onto his feet with an irritated look creased into his brow. Looking between the twins, the Crane School student sucked his teeth in annoyance at the sight of them both unconscious after such a short scuffle. Pathetic, energy began to build at the tip of Tien's finger, though, "You did get in my way, so I'm afraid you'll both need to pay. Maybe in the afterlife you'll learn your place. Don't even think about it." Bulma's biting command drew the martial artist's own fury to where she now stood, feet firmly planted and the barrel of a handgun aimed straight at him. Normally, Tien wouldn't worry about some weak civilian pointing such a weapon at him, but when he stared into Bulma's eyes, the young man could tell that she was perfectly capable of pulling that trigger, of taking his life. And that's when he laughed. What's so funny?" Bulma hissed, finger on the trigger even as the mocking guffaws echoed inside her home. "This isn't a joke, get out of my house, or I'll shoot you. Were I an ordinary man, I'm sure you would. Unfortunately I am nothing so simple." Before she could blink, Tien vanished, only to reappear with her weapon clutched in hand. Gaping in both shock, as well as horror, Bulma's entire body began to grow cold as her knees shook. The weight of fear quickly became too much for the young woman to handle though, and she dropped to the floor, left helpless as the martial artist now towered over the heiress, a cruel look etched into his own face. "I'll commend you for your efforts," Tien snickered. "I even respect that you were fully prepared to kill me, simply to save those two, but I'm afraid this is the end for all three of you. I'll kill you each quickly, and then wait here for Kakarot's return so that I can watch as his entire world comes crashing down around him. Ha 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 ha." Tears welled at the corners of Bulma's eyes then, as instead of the end of her own gun she now stared down the point of Tien's finger, a bullet of yellow energy beaded at the tip. The horrible truth, that she may very well die, began to finally settle in. The blue-haired genius could feel her body starting to shut down. A strangled cry for help, for Goku to appear and save the day, lodged itself in Bulma's throat, and in its place was a singed gasp like that of a dying fish. All hope seemed lost then, as Tien lowered his fingertip to rest no more than an inch from Bulma's forehead, letting the young woman feel the heat of his attack, and finally those tears began to fall as the young woman broke out into a fit of sobs. "No, please, why you don't have to do this. Tell that to Dao, when you see him in the next life." Resigned to her fate, Bulma simply closed her eyes and waited for the sour embrace of death, when suddenly, a new echo of laughter filled the air. Immediately, Tien whipped his body around to aim the Prepto Donray at whoever dared to interrupt the start of his vengeance. What he found, though, stopped the young man in his tracks, as the hideous cackle slowly came to an end. Standing at a startling 8 feet tall, with skin green like the purest emerald and pointed ears, this newest arrival looked down his pointed nose at the motley crew from high above the ruined entrance. Large, malevolent, yellow eyes stared in sadistic amusement as powerful arms crossed over a muscled chest. Dressed in a purple fighting GI, with the symbol for demon stitched across the front, it was easy for Tien to discern that the new face was a warrior, though what role they would soon play in this scene was yet to be determined. Oh my, their voice was deep and guttural, with a tint of dark glee coating every word. Please, don't stop the fun on my account. I'd love to see how this story ends. So then, you're not here to stop me? I'm here because I sensed an unusually high power, one that's far beyond anything I've felt from a human before. Hearing his race be spat out like rotten milk from this newcomer's tongue turned something in Tien's stomach, and he moved his attention from Bulma to the green giant as he called, "Oh, really? And what makes you such an expert on what we humans are truly capable of?" Piccolo raised a single, amused brow as he began to descend from the sky. Clearly, this upstart had no idea just who he was speaking to. No matter, he will soon. The hard way, considering I've killed a countless many of you in my own lifetime. The Demon King chuckled as he finally touched down. "I'd say that makes me quite the expert on your race's limitations." Tien could hear Bulma's chocked cry of horror behind him even as he stared down the beast that stood before them both. His heart hammered beneath his chest as adrenaline flooded the young man's veins, and the knot in Tien's stomach grew tighter as he fought the urge to turn and run from the horrible darkness that he sensed coming off this creature in waves. So it wasn't just your curiosity that brought you here, the Crane School student sniped, but your fear. You're so used to feeding off of the helpless and the weak, that the moment you sensed a real fighter you got scared, and came to try and take me out. A shiver of déjà vu traveled up Bulma's spine as she listened to the green monster laugh at her attacker's words. Harder than ever before, she prayed that Goku would arrive soon, that his training would be over and he would come to rescue her and the twins. "I suppose I should thank you," Piccolo chuckled. "It's been quite a long while since I've had such a laugh. A challenge for me?" "Don't kid yourself, boy. I have more power in the tip of one finger than you'll ever have in your entire life. There could be 10 of you, and it still wouldn't make a difference here today." At the first hint of his new enemy's aura flaring to life, Tien dropped into fighting stance and dug deep within for the power that he'd been saving to use against Kakarot. Staring down the mountainous, green beast, something tingled at the back of Tien's brain to let him know that this foe was nothing like those two younger punks from before. For Piccolo, the rush of power that surged through his younger, more powerful body filled him with a wicked sense of glee that had nearly been lost to him, and as he looked down at the foolish human who dared to challenge him, there was only one thought going through his mind. First, this weak boy, and then the world all will once again fear the might of King Piccolo. The noises of traffic as it whizzed by a single block away from Capsule Corp filled the air of West City as its citizens went about their daily lives, each and every one of them totally unaware for the moment of the deadly stare-down taking place just outside the landmark home to the Brief S family. One pair of those eyes belonged to Tien Shinhan, who stood only a handful of feet away from the most horrific darkness he'd ever felt in his young life. Yet, despite this, the martial artist chose to smother any sense of unease with pride and the knowledge that he had a much more important battle looming on the horizon. So, rather than panic, Tien swallowed all feelings fear, and shifted his weight so as to be ready for the fight in front of him. A battle, which came in the form of the newly rejuvenated King Piccolo, whose identity was still a mystery to the young man. The green giant hadn't even moved a muscle yet, and still he found himself filled with excitement. Taking a large breath of the fresh air, and promising to replace it with the smell of roasting flesh and fire, the Demon King tensed his powerful muscles and shifted into a slight running position. "This is it," Tien hissed to himself. "Here he comes." "Allow me to thank you," Piccolo chuckled. "This will be a nice warm-up for me provided you don't die too quickly." Well, I'll do my best not to disappoint you." "I've no doubt you will," Piccolo chuckled mockingly. "But until then, let us have some fun." Tien had only ever seen Dao move as fast as this new foe, yet surprised himself with how easily he'd been able to follow the beast, and even more so as he ducked away from being smashed by the fiend's elbow. It hurt to block the overhead spin kick that came after, but Tien was able to ignore the ache in his forearm enough so that he could slide around and drop into a leg sweep. Piccolo jumped to the side, avoiding the loss of his footing, before rushing back in to re-engage the bald human with a smirk on his face. They traded blows, bobbing and weaving through each other's combinations with barely a hint of strain on to show for it, and through it all Piccolo could feel the gradual control of his power return to him. "Let the fool think he's a match for me," the green-skinned monster chuckled as he sent Tien sliding back with a strong knee to the stomach. "It's only a matter of time now." The crane-style student though could sense that something was off almost immediately, and, as he twisted around his enemy's counter-elbow to his own knife strike, Tien began to call upon the well of ki within. Jumping back, he tensed and planted his feet firmly into the city street. "I don't know what you're planning, but it won't work. I've been trained by the best there's ever been, and now, I think it's time to show you just what that means. Prepare yourself, round 2 starts now." There was a twinge of fear in Piccolo's heart then, and a memory of green energy swirling around him before eternal darkness played back through his mind, before the realization that man would surely have died before his current opponent's time settled over him. Flexing his neck as he rotated a single shoulder, the Demon King grinned maliciously at the human martial artist. "And here I thought I'd been quite open about my plans, the destruction of your filthy race. You humans are a hideously inferior species, hardly fit to live as my children's slaves, let alone challenge me. But by all means, please do your absolute best to stop me. It'll make it that much more satisfying to watch you fail." "That's what you think," Tien growled as he felt the energy build to the right levels, multi-form. Soon, Piccolo watched as his one foe became 4, and the grin stretched across the villain's face took on a tint of intrigue at the memory of the first time he'd seen it. Amused, the Demon King even allowed the blue-haired human to scuttle away from behind them and drag 2 others with her. There'd be plenty of time to toy with them, but only after putting this whelp in his place. "You'd said 10 of me wouldn't be enough. Well, I'll bet even 4 of me is too much for you. But, for good measure, let us see how well you do against this for witch's technique." Now, this was a move Piccolo had yet to encounter, and the Demon King found himself mildly impressed as he watched each of his foes grow an extra set of arms from behind their backs. Chuckling deep in his throat, the green giant readied himself once more for combat and leaped forward in a burst of great speed, enjoying the apprehensive look on the human's many faces as he went. "Very fancy, boy, but let us see just how well you've perfected those techniques." This, Tien hadn't been expecting, and watching his foe be so eager in the face of what should be overwhelming odds sent off alarm bells at the front of the young man's brain. However, there was little time to think on this before the monster fell upon him and his copies. They tried to circle him, to surround the green beast and force him to defend from all angles, yet with each passing second it seemed as if this fiend was getting faster. It wasn't long before Tien found himself the one on the defensive, despite outnumbering his opponent, and watched as one by one each doppelganger was smashed into oblivion and faded from existence, leaving just he and the green giant to continue their fight one-on-one. The arm coming from Tien's left shoulder blade reached out hastily to catch the incoming fist meant for the young man's face, but the sheer pain that surged through its muscles forced the martial artist to stumble back. This left him open though, and a powerful knee came crashing into Tien's stomach, sending the bald warrior flying across the street and crashing into the park grounds a few yards away. Piccolo watched his foe as they curled into a groaning ball of pain, and a malicious grin stretched tightly across the giant's face as he began to float over to inspect the damage. "Come now, human, surely that wasn't all you had? Or perhaps, this teacher of yours wasn't as powerful as you made him sound? Whichever it is, get up, I'm not finished playing with you yet, I've hardly even begun to get warmed up." Hearing this strange creature talk down about his master fueled Tien's already burning rage at Dao's untimely demise, and the bald martial artist used this to roll over and launch a powerful blast of ki from the palm of his hand. Brilliant, blinding light filled the teen's vision then as his attack erupted in a violent explosion upon contact with the giant's chest. Those next few moments, silence reigned supreme as even the noise of capsule cars came to a halt. Still on the ground, Tien huffed for breath as his aching lower ribs cried out for medical attention, but there was a triumphant grin on his face despite the pain as he stared at where his foe had once been. "How's that, you freak? Hot enough for YA?" What came next though, was nothing like what the crane-style student had been expecting, as a large hand came rushing out of the smoke to wrap around his throat. Gurgling for air, Tien found himself hoisted into the air as the arm attached to the hand began to retract, until finally he was once more face to face with the unharmed form of the green giant. "Oh, you humans, always such a crafty, cowardly lot, taking any chance you can to score the victory over your superiors. No, boy, that poor excuse for an attack couldn't even scotch my uniform. All you've done now is make me angry." Tien choked out a cry of pain as the claws around his neck lightly pierced his flesh, leaving rivulets of blood to ooze down the cords of his throat as the demon squeezed his windpipe. Through the agony, Tien fought for the breath to speak before his gravely voice filled the air. "I don't understand. Who are you? What are you?" Piccolo looked into the eyes of his prey and raised a single, amused eyebrow as the human struggled to free himself. "So then, you truly didn't know figures your kind would do their best to erase me from their history. Ah, you poor fool, perhaps if you had known, you could have survived just a bit longer, but I digress." Tossing Tien back down onto the ground, Piccolo then gathered energy into the tips of his first 2 fingers, and sent rings of ki out to surround the young teen's wrists and ankles so that he couldn't move. "I am pure evil made into flesh, the bringer of death. I am the one who is meant to rule over the humans with an iron fist. I am the very thing each and every human fears in the darkest corners of their hearts. I am the supreme king of all that is unholy and despicable, the one and only King Piccolo." I didn't want to believe it. "But your energy is far too horrible to belong to anyone else." Large, angry, yellow eyes shifted as their owner growled, "Who dares interrupt my return to greatness?" The answer came in the form of 2 old men with another, younger, fighter off to the side. Roshi of the Turtle School stood beside Tien's own master, Shen, with a young man the crane-style student had never seen before beside them. He wore the Kame-style orange GI, and was bald just like Tien, with 6 dots decorating his forehead to show that he de-studied from Aran Temple. "We dare," Roshi hissed from a few yards away, "and if you think for even a second that we'll just stand back and allow you to throw this world back into chaos, you've got another thing coming, Piccolo." "Oh," the Demon King scoffed, "so you managed to survive my last reign of terror on your pathetic species then, HM? Well then, I must say, the 2 of you are the very reason humans need to be eradicated. They don't know when to surrender." An immense pressure descended on the new trio, and Krillin found himself struggling not to drop down onto all fours while the 2 martial arts masters were reminded of just how terrible their foe truly could be. But before they could think on it too much, their enemy let out a snarl and launched himself at the trio in a mind-boggling display of speed. Roshi barely had time to push Krillin away before the Demon King fell upon him, but those precious seconds cost the elderly fighter, and he was left unprepared for Piccolo's fist as it rammed into his chest. Roshi's whole world went white then, and the old man hardly felt the way his own body crashed against the street after being sent flying. Shen tried to catch Piccolo off guard with a Dodone Ray at point-blank range, but the technique failed to even scratch the green giant, and Tien's master was soon ducking in a desperate attempt to keep his head as Piccolo countered with a swipe of his clawed hand. A knee that followed though caught the crane-style master in his gut, and soon enough he too was laid out on the street. "No, master!" Tien forced himself to his feet at the sight of his teacher being manhandled by vile monster, and in a blind fit of rage went charging down King Piccolo. "I don't care who you are," the bald young man growled. "I won't allow you to get away with what you just did." Piccolo just allowed himself to smirk as he swatted away each of his opponent's strikes with the palm of his large hand. "Just be glad you've proven to be so amusing, human, or else you'd have already been ready to greet your master in the afterlife. Now, show me more of that rebellious fire, so that I can stamp it out before sending you to oblivion." It was easy for Tien to see now that his foe was merely toying with him, holding back the full force of his power, and while the warrior inside felt disgusted that it was still too much to handle, Tien chose to put such thoughts aside and try to find a way to use this to his advantage. Just then, an angry voice shouted from the side, drawing both fighters' attention. "Kamehameha!" There was a bright, blue beam of energy rocketing through the air on account of Krillin now that he'd gotten over the shock of Roshi being so easily brushed aside, yet the former monk had checked to see that the turtle hermit was still breathing before taking up the fight and allowed a bit of relief to flood his system even as Piccolo sent the beam off into the sky with a flick of his wrist. "You humans truly are nothing but overgrown roaches, harmless yet annoying in your resilience. Did you really think a sneak attack would catch the mighty King Piccolo off guard so easily?" Krillin chuckled. "Honestly, I was kind of hoping." "Yeah, then you're as stupid as you look, but this is good. I can tell you're much stronger than those old fools who accompanied you. Together with this other fool it may just be enough to finally get me warmed up. Your arrogance will be your downfall." Tien hissed as he slipped into a defensive stance. "I don't care what it takes, you won't conquer the world while I'm still standing." Piccolo scoffed at this. "Don't try to act so noble now, boy. Not after what I walked in on earlier. You and I aren't as different as you'd like to believe. That was revenge, justice. What you are doing is nothing but mass murder for your own enjoyment." "Is that all it takes, then?" Piccolo's face twisted into a maniacal grin, one that sent shivers up both young men's spines. Very well, my conquest will be a mission of revenge, justice, against the human race for imprisoning me. Krillin didn't want to hear anymore. Enough. I don't care what you wanna call it, you're murdering innocent people, and I can't let that happen. Then please, the Demon King chortled, come, and do all that is within your puny power to try and stop me. As the two martial artists were about to enter into a fight for their lives, Bulma had long since escaped from West City in a capsule car, and sped away with the unconscious twins in the backseat before switching to a jet copter for the rest of her journey. Even though she wasn't a fighter, Bulma had still been capable of feeling the horrible energy that the green giant had given off in waves. Her stomach twisted even now just thinking about it. And without knowing the stories, Capsule Corp's heiress could still tell that the new arrival to what had been meant to be her execution was the very evil which Goku had been taken away to train for. This pushed the blue-haired beauty into action then, and rather than simply run away, Bulma now steered her airborne vehicle towards Jingle Village. Surely, Goku's training was finished by now. I'll pick him up, and we can go back together so that he can clean those freaks' clocks. Yet, even she had to concede that her family's fastest jet copter would take over an hour to make that trip, with another hour devoted to the return, so Bulma could only hope that her home and all that she'd been working on would still be standing after so long. Pushing the machine to its limits, and praying that it would somehow break its own mechanical limits and go faster, the young woman's heart thundered in her chest as a sense of dread tried to take hold. Then what if the training wasn't enough? She'd already seen Goku lose to Tao, her vision of his invincibility forever shattered by the image of the boy battered and bloody on the ground. So who was to say that even a full year of training with a talking cat would be enough to take on a hideously evil being like the one she'd just escaped from in West City? I guess all I can do is hope, and have faith that Goku won't fail, not when so much is at stake. Yet, nagging in the back of her brain, Bulma wondered if hope was really going to be enough to save the day this time. Hope, the only thing Roshi had at the moment. This single word was what allowed the elderly martial arts teacher to keep his body from giving out on him even after the breaking of his ribs. Even now, after crawling with his fingertips and huddled behind the rubble of Capsule Corp's entrance, Roshi forced himself to hope that his plan would work. Watching Krillin use the after-image technique so flawlessly, however, did fill the old man with pride though, and solidified his resolve to do what needed to be done so the former monk could take those talents and attempt to become the next world champion. Thinking of the tournament and the gold-plated belt given to the winner sent Roshi's mind drifting a bit to where an image of a certain monkey-tailed former student filled his thoughts. Proud to a fault, yet stronger than anyone he had ever known, the turtle hermit could only dream of what sort of student Kakarot may have been if he'd taken to Gohan's kindness, if he'd lost their bout in the Tenkaichi Budokai. Just what sort of man would Goku had been? It was a bittersweet thought, but one Roshi couldn't help but ponder as he gathered every last bit of energy within himself and prepared it for one final technique. Perhaps Gohan and I can talk about it together, dream an endless dream of happiness and possibilities. Yes, that sounds nice. Krillin's howl of pain nearly broke the martial arts master's concentration, but the elderly man managed to push it into the back of his mind alongside the devastating truth that he could no longer feel Shin's energy. Instead of dwelling on them, Roshi used those feelings to fuel his power to the point the man's knees shook. He was only going to get one shot. You've both begun to bore me. Piccolo's gruff voice filled the air now, finally drawing Roshi's attention at last. I think it's time we end this pathetic little game now. Snapping his eyes open, the turtle hermit could now see his greatest nightmare towering over both his own student as well as Tien. The monster's hand was outstretched and glowing with the build-up of evil energy. Roshi's heart began to thump wildly under his damaged ribs as the thought of those two young warriors' deaths pushed him into action. You're right about one thing, Piccolo, it all ends here. The Demon King's head swiftly turned to find this new speaker, and an annoyed snarl decorated the fiend's face at the sight of the old man he thought to be dead still standing. Damn you, humans, when will you all learn to just accept the inevitable and die? I've no doubt I'll die this day, the turtle hermit lamented, but not before I see you sealed away again, this time permanently. Piccolo's already large eyes grew wider with fear as he recognized that familiar green energy swirling around his foe. The monster's cold, black heart even began to race as images of another eternity in darkness filled his every thought. No, you can't, I won't let you. Evil containment wave. What do you mean they aren't back yet? I apologize, Bora bowed, but it is the truth. Master Korin and your friend have not come down from the tower. Well, can't you go up and get them? This is an emergency. That evil, the one Goku's supposed to be training to fight. Yeah, it's here. I am aware. The dark-skinned warrior pinched his eyes shut in dread as he spoke. Piccolo's malice is all too easy to sense, even here. Unfortunately, even if I did make the climb, it would do us no good. They are in the dead zone. Only a deity may travel to limbo freely. Dread filled Bulma to her core at this reveal, and she dropped to her knees as the young woman's entire body shook. Normally expressive, crystal blue eyes dimmed, and air became nearly impossible to pass through her lungs as the girl whispered, "So then, what you're saying, is that all we can do, is wait, and hope, that they will return soon?" Hope? What good was hope in the face of certain doom? For Bulma, it was a question she dreaded the answer to as she turned her face to the sky and screamed, "Goku, where are you? Evil containment wave." No. Not this time, human. The whole world seemed to be lost in an eerie shroud of green then, and Krillin watched from his place in the dirt as both Master Roshi and King Piccolo seemed to get swallowed up by the elderly martial artist's attack. A hideous wailing noise filled the air and Krillin felt an unpleasant tingle race down his spine as it rang in his ears, yet the young teen forced his eyes to stay focused on the battle of wills before him. He needed to see his teacher be victorious. Suddenly though there was a loud boom, and a concussive explosion ripped through the surrounding streets. Krillin flinched as a piece of debris struck him in the forehead, but he did his best to ignore the pain even as a steady stream of blood oozed from the wound. Finally, all was silent, and even the noises of the city stopped as if waiting for the big reveal. Though Krillin was sure it had more to do with the people's fear for the unknown origin of the ruckus, the cloud of dust that Roshi's sealing technique kicked up had begun to dissipate though, and in the remaining shroud one could begin to make out a single figure standing in its shade. A tall figure. No, can't be. One who, as the cloudy blanket was lifted, wore a sadistically excited grin that showed off a set of vicious fangs. How? Master said that technique was unbeatable. How could he still be standing? And then that when he saw it, there, lying in a bloody heap at Piccolo's feet, was the dead body of mutant Roshi. The man's face was a twisted mask of agony and pain, with a crimson stream staining his goatee and a gaping hole punched through Roshi's sternum. Krillin felt his heart break at the sight and he began to cry, but the young fighter forced himself to choke back his own sobs at the realization Piccolo hadn't actually spotted him yet. The demon probably assumed he was dead, so, pressing his face painfully into the street and locking his shoulders so they didn't shake, Krillin was forced to listen as his master's murderer goatee about his victory before flying off. Perfect! I wasn't sure my arm would stretch far enough in time, but it worked. And now, with the last of the humans who know about that despicable technique out of the way, my rule over this planet is assured. Piccolo's vile laughter rang in Krillin's ears long after the villain blasted off into the sky, and it would be another half hour before the young man would find the strength to climb to his feet. Cradling Roshi's lifeless corpse in his arms, Krillin wept even as he picked up the anguished cries of West City's citizens. He failed. His master had failed, and now the Earth was doomed. The heartbreak of the dream followed poor Krillin into the waking world even as he was being shaken awake. Krillin, hey, get up you idiot, this is important. Go away, I'm not in the mood right now. Bulma's eyes narrowed before she reeled back and slapped the young man in the head. Well, get in the mood, moron. This is serious. Oh. Bulma, what the hell? Why don't you bother someone else? Because I need the strongest fighter we've got, and since Goku still isn't here yet, that leaves me with you. Krillin rubbed his sore noggin while sitting up in the cot he laid out on the floor, the young warrior's face a mask of agitation and sadness. Goku's not here cause he knows he can't win either. I've told you that 1,000,000 times in the last 2 weeks. How much longer before you just accept it? Bulma's nostrils flared as she grabbed a fistful of Krillin's tank top. And I've told you to keep your opinions to yourself. Now quit moping and get up, you need to hear this. Groaning as the blue-haired girl stood back and waited for him, Krillin finally forced himself to do as she asked, stretching as he heated himself to his feet. There, I'm up. Now what do you want, Bulma? She'd been up late again. He could see it in the bags under her eyes and the way her once shimmering hair now stuck out like a bird nest. Yet there was an alertness in that half-lidded gaze, and even as she covered up with a stained crop top and cargo pants, Bulma Brief still managed to be the most beautiful woman in the room. A hard thing to notice though when one's eyes were instead drawn to the various rifles and handguns strapped to her slender, sexy body. I was up early this morning, checking the radio feeds from other survival camps, and I found out that there is going to be another offering to King Piccolo at Kansai Stadium this afternoon. Krillin flinched at the news. There seemed to be an offering every day. How many this time? 100. Half of them are believed to be children. Damn it, Bulma folded her arms. So you see why I wanted you up? Krillin, I'm serious, you're these people's only hope right now. With Tien off fighting alone and the twins still recovering from his assault on my house, there's just no one else strong enough to stand up to those monsters. Well, what about you? I've seen you take them out with your weapons before, why don't you go out there and get myself killed? Don't be an idiot. My way only works when they aren't paying attention. Besides, the twins aren't in any shape to protect me against so many at once right now. Kami, above what's gotten into you. I'm afraid, alright. Bulma jolted at the sheer volume of Krillin's anger and self-loathing before the area went quiet. They hunkered down in her family's nuclear shelter under the house, and that to-the-floor design weren't in any danger of being discovered unless one of Piccolo's spawn literally watched them use the exit. This allowed Krillin to unleash the full brunt of his pain and anger without worrying they'd be discovered. I watched the strongest fighter I know try everything in his power to stop that monster, and it wasn't even close to enough. If Master Roshi didn't stand a chance against them, then what hope do I have? Bulma, the disheveled genius, just narrowed her eyes at the younger teen though. I'm not telling you to beat them, Krillin, I'm asking you to help those children escape. Piccolo isn't even at the stadium right now. I'm sure together we can take on whoever is, though you've beaten that freak-ass minions before. But what if I can't this time? Oh, or what if you're wrong and Piccolo is there? We'll both die. Bulma threw her hands up and hollered, but then a new voice called from the doorway. Forget about him, Bulma. I'll go with you. Yamcha was leaning against the frame, his arms crossed and showing off a series of bandages wrapped around the former bandit's bicep. He'd been quick to find her after Piccolo's army began to descend upon Earth, and made a vow to protect the blue-haired beauty at all costs. However, seeing her admirer left a nauseous feeling in Bulma's gut. She'd avoided asking the scruffy young man because the Capsule Corporation heiress didn't trust Yamcha to keep her alive. Just remembering how he got those bandages made Bulma worry for her own safety. Sadly, it would seem he was the blue-haired beauty's only hope, so with a growl Bulma sent one last glare at Krillin. Fine. Be a coward. I'll go and save those people, you just wait here and cry in the corner for the day our luck runs out and one of them does find this place. She made it to the door before stopping one last time, not even bothering to look over her shoulder as she told the former monk. You used to act like Goku's rival, right? Well, what do you think he'd do right now? With that, Bulma shut the door and left the bald teen to stew in his thoughts. I know what I said, but this is still fucking crazy, the female genius berated herself as she carefully moved through the streets. The offerings took place all over the globe, but Bulma quickly noticed that more often than not Piccolo preferred to keep himself centered around Japan. To her, it seemed as though he feared the uprising of the martial arts community as a whole, and wanted to keep it stamped out. Yet for whatever his reasoning, Bulma prayed just this once that the monster was off in another part of the world so that it gave her time to slip in and out of Kansai Stadium. The bigger problem though, was that this would be Bulma's first rescue attempt with only Yamcha for backup. It doesn't help that idiot Tien decides he's better off fighting them all by himself. What a moron. He can't seriously think he's a match for King Piccolo after what Krillin's told me. However, this raised another question as Bulma dove into the shadows of an alley to avoid being spotted by one of the spawn who could fly. What chance did she have if left all alone? Another tidbit Bulma had theorized was that Piccolo shared a mental link with all he sired, since the fierce demon seemed to always show up after one of them was slain. That means I've got maybe 30 minutes to get in and get out of there, she calculated as the stadium came into view. But even this depended on just where King Piccolo was in the moment she started the rescue. So they needed to be quick, and as quiet as possible if there was any hope of saving the citizens trapped in Kansai. So with the first pair of goons in sight, Bulma checked the silencers on her weapons and set her watch before taking aim. In 3, 2, 1, thwack! Thwack! Hardly a second passed between each shot, but even as the monster's bodies dropped to the pavement, Bulma waited another 5 seconds to make sure everything was clear before rushing up towards the entrance. Bulma, Yamcha hissed as they moved, do you know where the people are being kept? Considering there's so many, my guess would be that Piccolo's goons are stashing them in the field. But that means, I know what it means, lunkhead, that's why I needed someone to come with me. Now just shut up before your loud whining gets us caught. With Yamcha taking point, the two scurried through the arena as quietly as they could, doing their best to push the sound of children crying far from their minds while keeping an eye out for any enemies that may be patrolling the halls. For Bulma, making it to the cheap seats so easily made her nervous. But as she peeked out from behind a wall to see the field, those feelings turned to fury and disgust. "I thought I told you to keep that brat quiet." She watched as a mother shielded her blanket-wrapped baby from the snarling gaze of Piccolo's spawn, the infant's cries having been the same Bulma had heard moments before. "I'm trying," the mother sobbed. But you're scaring her. Please, can't you just let us go? What have we ever done to any of you?" "Shut your mouth, human. I've had just about enough of you and that disgusting sack of flesh you call a child. Maybe you'll learn to be a little more quiet in the next dimension." "No," she screamed while the monster raised his claws into the air. "Please, no. Somebody, anybody, help us." Thwack. With her eyes closed, the mother didn't see the way her would-be killer's body stiffened or the bloody hole that now colored his pasty green forehead. It wasn't until she no longer felt the monster's cold shadow, and heard something drop like a rock to the ground, that the woman dared to open her eyes. Dead. The creature who'd been ready to send her and her baby to the great beyond, was instead laying face down in the turf with blood pooling under a gaping mouthful of fangs. Instantly, every other monster keeping watch over the imprisoned humans jumped into an uproar at the slaughter of their kin. They turned their eyes up towards the stadium seats, and each of the scaly-faced demons snarled as a single human came leaping down at them. "Why don't you freaks pick on somebody your own size?" But even as he challenged them, Yamcha could feel his heart in his throat, and the way his knees shook as he looked around at the small army of enemies staring back at him. Only the knowledge that running would leave Bulma defenseless kept the former bandit from abandoning Kanzi Stadium's prisoners to their fate. "I don't know who you think you are, human, but you're about to suffer dearly for what you've just done. When we're through with you, you'll beg for death." The former bandit did his best to look confident as he shifted into a fighting stance, making sure to keep each opponent in sight while calling up every ounce of power sleeping within himself. "We'll see about that, you group of overgrown goblins. If you had any idea of who you're about to mess with, you'd all be screaming for Piccolo to come save your sorry but Yamcha the desert bandit stands above all." Grins and mocking chuckles were the response of Piccolo's spawn as they slowly began to creep in, closing Yamcha into a tight circle. He couldn't feel their power, but over the last 2 weeks Yamcha had discovered that each of Piccolo's children were at least equal in strength to himself at their weakest. Hearing horror stories from Krillin back at the bunker, however, the former bandit swallowed hard as he prayed none of these monsters were as powerful as the one known as Tambourine. A move from his peripheral drew Yamcha's attention away from his fears though, and soon enough the young man was leaping into the air so as not to be smashed by an elbow to the skull. Flipping over the circle of demos, Yamcha landed shakily on his feet before finding himself about to be overrun by Piccolo's spawn. Raha ah, gra, nrgh. Underneath their own battle cries and lust for blood, Drum and his brethren were too focused on their prey to notice Bulma up in the stands taking aim until it was too late. Unloading her rifle from above, the blue-haired genius managed to thin her allies' enemies by half before they got their guards up and the bullets bounced off of them. "You two take the scrawny human," Drum ordered. "I'll head up and see about that sneaky little mosquito giving us trouble." Hearing this, Yamcha's eyes go wide and he lashes out at the two monsters charged to keep him busy. No, but it was too late. Drum's powerful legs pushed him off the ground and up into the bleachers before propelling the rotund fiend the rest of the way so that he soon stood before a crouching Bulma. The teen beauty's own eyes filled with shock at being discovered so quickly before they narrowed, and Capsule Core Heiress swapped her gun for a sticky grenade. "Eat this, freak!" With the explosive flying through the air between them, Bulma threw herself over the stadium seats and skipped down the bleachers like stones in a river while hitting a button on the wrist-mounted terminal. The explosion that followed was hot against her back, and the stench of burnt flesh made the young woman want to puke, but Bulma shoved all those discomforts from her mind and simply pushed to get as far away from her enemy as possible. Because there's no way that was enough to stop him. And, seemingly to agree, Drum's furious cries came echoing from within the ball of fire he'd been swallowed by. "Damn you! Filthy wench, I'll fucking kill you for that! Shit! Bulma, get over here, hurry!" Her eyes were blazing with indignation as she leapfrogged over another set of seats to finally make it onto the turf. "What the hell do you think I'm trying to do? You think I'm running like this for my health, moron?" Just as Bulma managed to stride to safety behind her fellow freedom fighter, their enemy came barreling down at them with bloodshot eyes, and fangs glistening when Drum noticed both of his kin had been defeated. "Your pals weren't much of a challenge," Yamcha puffed out his chest as he made sure to stand resolutely in front of the girl he fancied. "So what makes a freaks howl like you think they'll stand any better chance? If that is how you feel, how about I give it a try?" A cold shiver ran up Bulma's spine as that voice echoed in her ear, and she could see the way Yamcha's muscles tensed at the same time. The pit in her stomach grew, and with every ounce of willpower she could muster, Bulma turned her gaze skyward and felt her heart stop at what she found. His large, muscular form hovered high above the stadium, with shadows playing across the green Scourge's goblin-like face, but there was no denying who had finally arrived. King Piccolo. Cold, cruel laughter filled the arena then as humanity's worst nightmare began to descend upon the captured citizens. I'll admit to being impressed, though you lot have lasted far longer than I'd ever imagined. But it's truly a futile effort, because soon you'll all be nothing but food for me and my children. And not if I have anything to say about it. Piccolo sneered in taunting delight as he stared down his latest challenger, a feeling of deep satisfaction welling up within at just the thought of what sorts of torment he would soon inflict upon this entire stadium. But first, the boy. It's funny, I'm getting a bit of déjà vu. What is it about this woman that the men of your pathetic species are so quick to put themselves between she and I? The fiend's large, yellow eyes flickered over to his spawn for a moment. I'm any case Drum. I want you to stay out of this until I say otherwise. These two are mine. Yamcha just did his best to steady his breathing, opening and closing both fists as he stared down the very monster who defeated a legend like Mutant Roshi. What's this? Cat got your tongue? No matter, I'd much rather hear you scream. The speed his enemy moved at was well beyond what Diablo Desert's bandit could follow, and soon enough the young man had a mouthful of blood as he felt Piccolo's giant fist crash against his face. Ah, Yamcha! Bulma ducked out from behind the stricken martial artist, diving to the ground and rolling in the dirt as she unclipped a pistol from her waist. Nice try, fool! A wall of invisible force slammed the young woman like a train and sent her rolling back with a cry of pain before she could even fire a shot. Leave her alone! Yamcha's aura flared with his rage and he rushed Piccolo in a blind frenzy. Fists and legs swung wildly, but the man's enemy simply scoffed as he easily danced away from each and every strike. So then, this is what's left of the martial arts community. Piccolo grabbed Yamcha's fist. What a pitiful display, and to think, I used to fear what your kind was capable of. Crack! With a single squeeze Yamcha's hand was shattered, and he dropped to his knees as he wailed in agony. Tears quickly filled the man's eyes, and as Piccolo switched to slowly crushing his skull, those cries turned to sobs of pain and fear. No, stop! Please? I don't want to die like this. Please? Then you should have thought about that before getting in my way. Piccolo felt the tips of his claws begin to sink into the human's skull, the flesh giving way and warm blood coating the monster's fingertips. This new pain sent Yamcha's heart slamming against his ribs, and snot trailed down the former bandit's nose as he made a pitiful attempt to free himself. I'm sorry, please spare me. Not a chance. Piccolo chuckled darkly. You wouldn't even be good enough to feed to my children. You've made your bed, now it's time to sleep in it forever. With his prey screaming and the hunger for the chance to further humiliate him filling Piccolo's brain, he didn't notice the movement out of the corner of his eye, never realizing that Drum's own gaze was solely focused on watching Yamcha's agony as well. Thwack! Woo! So when Bulma finally managed to turn over and see beyond the blood dripping into her eye, the single shot she took at King Piccolo's side went completely unnoticed until it was too late. The second those claws left him, Yamcha fell on his side nearly unconscious from the pain, with only Piccolo's snarling to echo in the former bandit's ears. For the Demon King, his pupils nearly vanished and a vein pulsed steadily against the giant's forehead as he turned to stare hatefully at the one who wounded him. You! Poor Bulma didn't even have a chance to think about escaping before she was snagged by Piccolo's extended arm, those claws shredding through her shirt as he dragged the girl forward. A second later they were face to face, and the heiress struggled not to vomit from the stench of raw meat wafting on every breath that left Piccolo's lips. Had I known what a literal thorn you'd be in my side, I'd have killed you that first day we crossed paths. But don't worry, I'll fix that now. Bulma's small, gloved hands came up and wrapped their slender fingers around the thick muscles of her captor's forearm, desperate to free herself as he broke out into a chorus of hideous laughter. By now the people who'd been captured had long since fled, leaving only a broken fighter and helpless heiress to drown under the dark aura of King Piccolo. Or so they thought. If you don't get your hands off of her, you'll have more than just a thorn in your side to worry about, fool. That voice. It was one she'd grown fond of, to the point that even as he spoke like an emissary of death itself, Bulma's heart still fluttered at the sound of it. And as she looked up beyond Piccolo's hulking mass, the heiress of Capsule Corp could make out the silhouette of his growing muscles and wild dark hair. A tail flicked restlessly from side to side, and there was a stern mask of displeasure settled neatly over his face. Yet it was the eyes that did it for Bulma. as behind a wall of cold fire she noticed the warming light of protection, and a promise to keep her safe that had been struck over a year ago on their first meeting. Goku. The sight that greeted Kakarot as he descended from the sky was one that pushed his young face into a heavy mask of cold, dark fury. Bulma's top was torn to shreds, revealing streaks of her soft pale skin, and while there didn't seem to be any open wounds, Kakarot could still make out faded bruises near the girl's ribs. Those eyes that seemed to outshine the clearest ocean stared up at him, filled with hope and joy, were tinted in a fear that stoked Kakarot's rising anger even further. His feet didn't touch the ground as the warrior came face to face with who he could only assume was King Piccolo. Rather, the tips of his boots hovered inches above soft grass while Kakarot glared into the face of evil. With ears like yours, I know you heard me, so could it be that the mighty Piccolo has a death wish? Mouth twitching with amusement, the Scourge of Earth scoffed at his newest foe's challenge. Funny, I could ask you the same thing. What sort of fool must you be to oppose me so openly when I've already laid waste to so many of your kind? Kakarot sucked his teeth at the accusation, dropping his hands to his sides as he stared up at the giant green menace. And did you succeed by talking them to death? Because so far your voice is the only thing I find so agonizing about the great Piccolo Daimao. Noticing the vein that bulged from his enemy's forehead seconds later put a smile on Kakarot's face, even as the villainous fiend snarled down at him. You've got a pretty big mouth for such a little pest. Loosening his claws, Piccolo dropped Bulma to the ground before cracking his knuckles with a sneer. I like to talk, Kakarot shrugged. It's part of my charm. It's going to get you killed if you're not careful, boy. The lust for battle gave Young Eyes an excited glow. Maybe, but against you? I think I'll take my chances. Fangs gnashed together as a pointed nose flared and more veins began to pop against a thick, green neck. Impudent little brat. Now you've done it. A flash of red was the only warning, yet Kakarot's hand swatted Piccolo's eye beam skyward before they could reach him as an outstretched palm stopped the mouth blast that immediately followed. I really hope that's not all you've got, because if it is, you'd better quit. As his enemy roared, Kakarot managed to catch a glimpse of Bulma dragging Yamcha into the safety of the stadium's shadows before he was dashing backwards to avoid being speared. There was no denying the lethal point of those claws as they came slicing through the air in a mad attempt to pierce their enemy's heart, but Piccolo's frustration spiked with every strike dodged. The fucking brat doesn't even look like he's breaking a sweat. Indeed, Kakarot hadn't lost the smirk on his face even as he spun around Piccolo's roundhouse kick. If anything, each attack the spiky-haired warrior danced around only seemed to strengthen that smug fire behind his eyes. A fire Piccolo wanted to stamp out permanently. Now that's a neat trick, Kakarot mused as he watched his foe stretch his arm, but you'll need to do better than that. The vile monster's goblin-like face twisted into a mask of malicious glee. I did. It was like the strike of a cobra, swift and decisive, and in a blink Kakarot found himself wrapped up in his enemy's muscled flesh as if he were a rat. Nowhere for you to run to now, it's over. The taste of dirt was something Kakarot wasn't used to, and as he found himself being smashed against the stadium grounds, the monkey-tailed boy found it to be a flavor he didn't care for. But the last straw came when Piccolo drew him in to smash his large fist into the younger fighter's face. HRGH. Not so tough when you can't fly around, are you? Those calloused fingers spread and closed back around Kakarot's face as their owner began to call upon the well of ki deep within. I'll admit that you were a bit stronger than the rest of those pitiful humans, but my power is beyond any of your kind, no matter what silly little tricks you've learned. The heat of Piccolo's incoming attack began to warm his captive's skin, while the boy's nose wrinkled under the stench of blood and decay. But Kakarot didn't panic. Instead, the young fighter brought his thumb up and pressed hard into Piccolo's wrist, channeling ki just under the skin for an added bit of power. The result was squelch. Bloody. Kakarot ignored the dripping mask of purple life force covering his face in favor of watching as the Demon King howled in agony. A vicious grin found its way back to Kakarot's lips, his fangs gleaming under the midday sun, as Piccolo clutched desperately at the gushing stump that used to be his hand. Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I just don't know my own strength yet. You filthy creature, I'll make you pay dearly for this. Well, you'll probably want to summon one of your spawn to help with that, because it looks to me like you could really use a hand. The spiky-haired alien's cackle echoed through the empty stadium and filled Piccolo's pointy ears as he seethed against the unimaginable agony surging from his wrist. Listening to the monkey-tailed boy's mocking laughter flooded Piccolo's blood with wrathful fire, and he began to draw forth a hefty load of energy before sending it into his wound. You think this is funny, boy? Just wait. I'll show you exactly why this entire planet fears the very mention of my name. Hark! Cold black eyes widened as Kakarot's laughter stopped. What the? There was a sickening, slimy noise next that was followed quickly by a fully functioning hand sprouting from where the Demon King's last one had been. Kakarot wrinkled his nose at the stench in the air, yet couldn't he help being impressed with Piccolo's abilities as the green giant rolled his wrist and flexed all 5 fingers. You're a crafty one, that's for sure, kid. But all you've done is delay the inevitable. Faye, you've talked a big game, but weren't you just the one who had to regrow their own hand? I think the might of King Piccolo has been exaggerated. You're hardly even a warm-up. Now hurry up and show me something interesting, or I'll blast you into oblivion for boring me. Large, yellow eyes narrowed as their owner sneered at the monkey-tailed fighter. However, Piccolo didn't attack just yet. A sharp pain nagged at the villain's heart, and he did his best to take slow, deep breaths in an effort to quell it before making another move. I'll need to be careful, I can't risk too many more regenerations. Unfortunately, Kakarot wasn't interested in waiting, and the boy blew out a sigh before rocketing through the air. Fine then. If you're not gonna get the party started, I'll just come to you. Piccolo snarled, and plunged deep within to call forth every last ounce of power he had before an invigorating rush flooded the fiend's veins, reminiscent of Shenron restoring his youth. The surge of power caught Kakarot's attention, but the younger warrior brushed it off as he continued his charge, fully committed to act. Ha! Closing the gap in a blink, the orphaned alien let out a yell, as his fist flew like a bullet train intent on running Piccolo through. Smack! And smashing against the green giant's palm. The vibrations ran through Kakarot's body and sent a shockwave across the stadium, leaving behind a small crater in their wake as Piccolo grinned maliciously at his foe. Eyes like coal watched their enemy's skin darken, resembling an emerald, while thick crimson lines seemed to bleed out underneath the Demon King's own sickly yellow orbs, and his patches of pink flesh morphed to a neon blue. A chuckle filled the air, cold and dark. And Piccolo slowly squeezed his fingers around Kakarot's smaller hand while baring fangs that gleamed under the sun. I hope that's not all you've got. If it is, you'd better quit. Nostrils flaring, the younger fighter had no time to retort before he was sent flying back from a blow to the face. There wasn't any time to recover before Piccolo was on him again, grabbing Kakarot's GI and hurling the boy into the sky with a hearty roar. Damn it, what the hell did he do to become so fast? Pow! Hark! The breath flew from Kakarot's lungs as he found his enemy's fist buried in his stomach, only for the pain to multiply with Piccolo's knuckles slapping across the boy's face. Ah, where do you think you're going? Crushing force wrapped around a small ankle, and Kakarot was lurched backward before his foe dropped an elbow into the young fighter's gut. Falling like a rock, Kakarot tried to fight through the thundering agony beating behind his eyes, but any thought of recovery went up in flames as King Piccolo began to send a volley of ki blasts raining down. You wanted to see my true power, kid? Well, here it is. How's this for a warm-up? The first shot sent Kakarot crashing into the ruined stadium grounds before every blast that followed smashed against him with the heat of a small sun, tearing apart his uniform and scorching the boy's skin. Anyone who could see inside the blinding light would be a spectator to Kakarot flopping against the earth like a fish out of water before Piccolo ended his assault. As the dust settled and a clear view could be seen, crystal blue eyes were brimming with tears and their owner struggled to breath at the sight of Earth's only hope lying lifelessly in the dirt. Gee Goku no. B Bulma, don't he kill you? But the heiress to Capsule Corp didn't listen, choosing instead to rush out onto the ruined field and drop to her knees by her best friend's side. No, this can't be happening, not again. Goku, come on, please get up. I need you. Cradling him in her arms, Bulma let her own pain show itself as it cascaded down the girl's cheeks. Broken sobs echoed in the silence louder than any drum, and despite trying to choke back the agony, Bulma found she simply could not keep her body from shaking. And then, she heard him. You should have warned your friend against fighting me, human. I would have killed him eventually, but at least that way he wouldn't have had to die so soon. Now, stand aside, it's time I finish off the little fool. The girl's beautiful face twisted into a snarl, wrinkling her nose and baring a set of white teeth, before she pulled a single handgun from its holster at her hip and aimed straight at Piccolo. No. Stay back. I won't let you kill him. Faye, you can't possibly think that pathetic little weapon will work on me a second time? Stupid girl, I am the most powerful being in the universe, the Lord of Darkness and Bringer of Death. I could take your head from your shoulders before you even had time to fire that hunk of human garbage. Now, stand aside, or else, you're just gonna kill me anyway, right? So go ahead, do it. But it'll be a cold day in hell before I just stand back and watch while you kill Goku. Piccolo's goblin-like face was overcome with a mask of disgust at how much raw, human emotion was on display. He spat, desperate to rid himself of the sour taste it left on his tongue, before stretching out a single palm and gathering energy from within. Fine. If that is the way you want it, I'll just kill you both. Stupid human, I'd forgotten all about you too. You could have escaped, you could have lived, but instead you'd rather die in a pathetic show of feelings. Screw you. Bam bam bam. Again and again, Bulma's finger pulled the trigger on her modified Glock 19, unloading a full clip even as she watched the bullets bounce off Piccolo's chest. But the second her weapon was empty, Bulma laid the unconscious alien youth back into the dirt and rushed to stand, spreading both arms wide even as tears continued to stream over rosy cheeks. Blue stared into yellow, human against a demon, and neither one noticed Kakarot's eyelids flutter. I hope you enjoyed your last breath, human, because now it's time to send you and that little brat straight to hell. To her credit, Bulma never bothered to close her eyes as Piccolo's overwhelming energy blast came down on her and the boy she was trying to protect. Capsule Corp SRS stood tall, with a straight back, and let the burning heat fall upon her pale skin. Flickers of a rustic orange blipped at the corner of Bulma's vision, but she just chalked it up to delirium brought on by impending doom, or even effects from just how hot Piccolo's attack was. Whoom! Smash! Until the flaming ball of ki was stopped short by an energy field. Made up of that almost burnt orange color from before, the sphere seemed to wrap all the way around her and easily blocked King Piccolo's energy blast, leaving the ball of death to sit in midair before finally fizzling out. What the? No, that's impossible. No one could have survived that. His opponent rose from his intended grave without moving a muscle, floating straight up onto his feet with dark bangs hovering over closed eyes. Piccolo felt a knot form in his stomach as he stared down at Kakarot, the boy's torso barely hidden beneath tattered shreds of a grey compression shirt, revealing wounds that seemed to heal near instantaneously under hissing trails of smoke. Yet, it was as the younger fighter opened his eyes that Piccolo Daimao experienced true fear for the first time in his entire life. Burning like molten amber and filled to the brim with a primal fury unlike any he had ever seen, it was as if Kakarot's gaze had frozen every muscle in Piccolo's body. This kid he's not human. Wah! Bulma didn't even have the chance to turn around before she was knocked off her feet by the backdraft of Kakarot launching himself off the ground. His ears echoed with the girl's wail, but the warrior's lust for battle narrowed his focus to the green giant in the sky, turning everything to shapeless, colorless blobs as he soared into battle with only one thought to kill. Rug! The smell was different, but there was no mistaking that purple ooze that gushed under Kakarot's fist as it slammed against Piccolo's pointed nose. Those large, yellow eyes lost focus just for a moment before shutting tight while their owner was sent flying through the air. There was hardly even time for the villainous fiend to notice he crashed through a skyscraper before powerful fingers squeezed down in his bald head. Naga! Gog! Kakarot's knee had barely moved back from Piccolo's face before the boy fired a powerful, violet energy blast directly into the green giant's chest. But this time, Earth's scourge had a scant few seconds to breathe, and he used those precious moments to get his bearings just as a snarling Kakarot was coming in for another attack. I don't think so. Not this time. He ducked under a clothesline meant for his throat, and slid into the raging boy's guard quick enough to land a side kick that pushed him back enough for Piccolo to regain a sense of footing. I'll kill you. Kakarot twirled around his foe's neon red eye beams as he flew back into the fight, leaning back from being sliced by razor-sharp claws and using the momentum to will into a backflip kick. Not good enough, Piccolo boasted, even as he felt the tip of his enemy's boot graze his chin. Wham! Rah! The villain's next attack was a quick shot of ki from the palm. Its force sent Kakarot crashing through another building before he flipped himself right side up, though his enemy seemed to have vanished. Nostrils flaring and ears strained, Kakarot's snagging spikes whipped through the air as he searched for Piccolo with ever-growing bloodlust. Zip! Throwing his hand up, the alien warrior swatted two more eye beams away as they rushed him from the side, but as Kakarot turned to face his opponent he found that the tyrant had vanished. Kakarot's fury only increased again, as he was forced to duck and deflect numerous attempts at frying him from afar, until the boy grew tired of games and roared into the sky. Throwing a hand up, palm towards the heavens, he let out a single grunt before firing an endless barrage of ki blasts into the atmosphere. Now what is the fool doing? Hidden from view, Piccolo could only wonder as to what his enemy's plan might be before both eyes bulged and all breath was stolen. Impossible! The blasts curved, and came down like a storm of death, falling from the endless blue like meteors. There was no escape. By the time it was over, there was nothing left of the city. Only a long, flat wasteland stretched as far as the eye could see. Yet, the consequences of his actions couldn't register with Kakarot as he found himself staring down the fool who dared to challenge him. Kill! That single mantra filled his brain, pushed him forward, and gave him the fuel to fight on. Piccolo stared as the monkey-tailed boy floated towards him, lack of height counting for nothing in just how menacing he appeared against such a backdrop of pure destruction. The Demon King scoffed though, seeing nothing but contempt and an urge to kill swimming in the depths of those amber pools. Heh, you hate me for what I've done, but look around, boy. This city was destroyed by your hand, not mine. Kakarot just ignored him, memories of the Dragon Balls and their power filtering at the back of his mind. Any and all damage could be reversed, so long as Piccolo paid for laying hands on Bulma and defying him. That was all that mattered. This decision seemed to be worn on Kakarot's face, as the Demon King found himself growling when his enemy made no notion of caring about the villain's taunts. Fine, if that's the way you want it, then let us see how you feel about this. Piccolo rushed the boy, eyes gleaming with hatred. Dropping low, he faked a knife strike and came up for an uppercut. Pathetic. Leaning back, Kakarot lifted his arm to block Piccolo as he spun into an aerial roundhouse kick, before taking him by the leg and tossing him aside. That guttural tone left a pit in the Demon King's stomach, but he didn't let it stop him as he pushed off the ground and came rushing back for another round. I'm not finished yet, boy. Wham! In the air, Kakarot was at the perfect height for Piccolo's fist to smash against his face, but the boy hardly moved an inch, and those mocking amber eyes stared into shocked yellow from beyond the giant's knuckles. You're not. Small fingers wrapped around a larger green wrist, but I am. This is beginning to bore me. The sense of déjà vu was lost in a sea of unimaginable agony, as Piccolo Daimo's entire right arm was ripped from its socket in an instant. A fountain of purple blood poured from the opening while Earth's scourge fell to his knees. Dark, emerald skin began to grow pale, returning to lime as both red streaks beneath Piccolo's tightly shut eyes vanished without a trace. Looking down at the once proud Demon King, Kakarot couldn't help but chuckle. So then, this is the extent of your power, Such a shame. I was hoping that you'd prove to be a worthy test for my own new strength, but it seems that I'll have to wait. I suppose though, if you begged, I might spare your pathetic life. There's no one else on this planet who could challenge me now, and it'd be a waste to lose such a fun punching bag. The horrible feeling of losing his arm and loss of blood was beginning to make Piccolo's head swim, but even as he sensed the slowing of his own black heart, the villain found enough strength to laugh. Why you think that you've beaten me, but I've already won? I could see it in your eyes. You think the eternal dragon will undo all that has been done. That Shenron will return your woman to you, but you're wrong. Piccolo lifted his head high, relishing the growing spark of denial and horror that flickered behind those once arrogant eyes. I killed the dragon after he restored my youth, you fool. The Dragon Balls have turned to stone, and with their power gone, the world will forever be scarred by my reign. None shall forget the dreadful might of King Piccolo. And that little wench will float forever in oblivion. Kakarot's eyes returned to normal now, and his face became a mask of terror as he listened to the last words of a dying monster. No, you're lying. Piccolo sneered, his goblin-like features stretched to the limit in malicious glee. My only regret is that I won't be there when you fly back and learn the truth for yourself, that it was you who killed her. Your little rainstorm surely vaporized every inch of that girl's body. I can almost imagine what it must have been like to hear her scream. The spine-chilling laughter that then echoed over the wasteland was ignored, as a distraught Kakarot launched into the air and sped off towards where he'd left Bulma during the battle. But, with his mind fragmented by images of the blue-haired beauty lying dead in the ground somewhere, Kakarot failed to hear his foe's final words. But where I failed, Piccolo struggled to choke back a mouthful of blood. My son shall succeed. And through him, my vengeance will be complete. He could feel the icy hand of death gripping tighter now, squeezing out every last drop of life that remained. He needed to hurry. Pooling together the last embers of his power, the egg was formed quickly and rose up out of Piccolo's stomach before pushing past the fiend's throat. Blah! As sweat trickled down and stung his eyes, the Demon King watched with a wicked grin as his final spawn went flying through the air. Satisfaction and relief soon washed over the tyrant then, and in his final moments Piccolo allowed himself one last laugh. Soon, my son, you shall show them all true despair, and I will have my revenge. Gone. It was all gone. No buildings, no trees, not even the road had survived. There was nothing. And it was all his fault. Sinking to his knees as the reality of what he'd done began to set in, Kakarot's fingers dug deep into the earth as hot tears welled in the corners of his eyes. He followed her scent, still lingering even after so much destruction, and found the stadium to be nothing but another slate of empty space. There wasn't even a stitch of clothing left behind. He began tearing up. "Bulma, I'm so sorry." Teeth gnashing, Kakarot slammed his fists against the ground and ignored how spiderweb cracks splintered out from underneath. "I was trying to save you, trying to keep him from hurting you, but all I did was get caught up in my own lust for blood again. Only now it's cost me my only friend," he cried. The howling winds were all that comforted him, and in his grief Kakarot failed to sense anyone approaching until they spoke. "Indeed, what good is all that power if you can't control it?" Kakarot's body tensed and moved faster than lightning, yet his energy blast was deflected by a wooden staff just as quickly. Dust swirled around pointed ankle boots, ruffled robes gave off the scent of fresh rain and rippled a wide-brimmed hood. "Who the hell are you? How did you survive my attack?" "Well now, it helps that I wasn't actually in the city when you destroyed it, Kakarot." The voice was low, and every word seemed as though it were run through a mixer of gravel. But all that mattered was that, whoever this was, they seemed fit to remind Kakarot of his mistake. "Shut up! What do you know about it? You have no idea what that bastard was about to do to Bulma. I had to do something." "You did, but then you allowed yourself to lose control, and you became no better than Piccolo. You became a monster." "Enough!" Fingers gripping the front of this stranger's robes, Kakarot raised his other hand, and began to build up a vibrant purple ki blast. "You're gonna tell me who you are, and what you want with me, or you'll be joining that fucking goblin in hell." A chuckle was his response. "It seems I owe an old friend a new bottle of Sakes apparently can't read. My symbol should have given me away immediately." Dark Eye stared, furious, into the shadows of that hood for another minute before flickering down to look at the kanji stamped at the center of this stranger's outfit. What Kakarot found stole all strength from his fist, and he dropped the hooded man as he discovered who he'd been talking to. "Kami? At your service. Why? What are you doing here? Why now?" "Divine intervention. My job is to help keep the balance, to watch over Earth, but because of my own wishes Piccolo was allowed to roam free in the first place. Now, so many people have suffered, and I need to fix it." Kakarot's eyes narrowed, and his head tilted. "Really? And how do you intend to do that?" "He told me he destroyed Shenron. No more dragon, means no more wishes." He could hear the grin under that hood at Kami's next words. "Then it's a good thing I'm their creator, Come back to the lookout with me, and I'll have Bulma return to you within the hour." "And what will you want from me, for her life?" "That's quite simple, Kakarot. I want your help." The young alien scoffed, folding his arms as he dropped to the ground. "With what? Piccolo is dead. How else could I help the Guardian of Earth now? Besides, aren't you supposed to be the good guy? Why are you bargaining like the devil?" "Because there is an even greater threat coming on the horizon, and I need you to be ready for it, Kakarot. The friend I mentioned before will help train you, make you stronger, so that when the time comes you'll have the power to keep Bulma safe without losing control." Reaching out his hand, the hooded stranger revealed a set of claws that peeked out from under billowing sleeves. "Even if she is all you care for on this planet, it's enough for me so long as your desire to protect her keeps Earth safe as well." It was only after a moment of mulling this over that Kakarot nodded and gripped Kami's sleeve. "You'd better keep your word," he warned as they both vanished in a blinding light. As it turned out, the rebirth of Shenron was a much more boring affair than Kakarot would have expected. "So the Dragon of Legend is just some silly little statue you made because you were lonely?" A crude summary, but yes. Although originally, making Shenron and the balls took considerable time and effort. "Lucky for you, my powers have grown far beyond what they were when I was a boy." Kakarot eyed the new set of wish-granting orbs, and rolled his eyes. "It's the planet that should feel lucky," he whispered coldly. The boy missed how Kami's hold on his staff tightened. "The dragon's power will be increased as well now. Shenron will grant 2 wishes instead of just 1. If the young warrior heard any undertone of stress in Kami's voice, he didn't show it, choosing instead to focus on what was coming next. "So that's it, right? I can make my wishes now? Whenever you're ready." "Yes," Kakarot chuckled, "you don't need to tell me twice. Now out of the way, I doubt Bulma wants to be dead any longer than she has been." Earth's savior had never actually seen the eternal dragon, but as he watched clouds darken and a blinding yellow light shoot up into the sky, he'd secretly admit the spectacle was impressive. For Kami, seeing his creation return to normal was a weight lifted off the Guardian's shoulders. There's no telling how much more negative energy the dragon could have absorbed. "I only hope that, After this, the balls can rest for at least 10 years. Without being a mind reader, there was no way for Kakarot to know about Kami's fears. Rather, the boy was more focused on making his wishes to Shenron. If I don't bring back everyone, then Bulma's only gonna be even more upset with me, so I wish for all those who died during my battle with King Piccolo to be brought back to life. He watched the dragon's eyes flash and felt the wind pick up, before a moment later Shenron let Kakarot know that his wish had indeed been granted. What came next, however, dropped Kami's jaw to the floor. My second wish is to bring Bulma here, to the lookout. Kakarot. No, it shall be done. Kami jerked the young warrior around by the shoulder, his large yellow eyes wide with disbelief as he gaped at the boy. What did you do? What about all those killed before your battle? Kakarot pulled himself free and glared into the Guardian's hood. What about them? They aren't my concern, Guardian of Earth. I didn't kill them. If you're so worried about them, wish them back on your own time. Kami's staff splintered under his grip. You know that I can't. Then I guess those people are going to have to get used to the afterlife, Now, if you'll excuse me, there was a bright whirlwind of lights, like something out of a dream, shards of diamond that revealed a face Kakarot worried he would never see again. And for the first time, there was a true beat of feeling deep within his heart. The last thing Bulma could really remember was a brilliant display of lights in the sky, almost like fireworks, before one of them came rocketing down and then nothing. It was all foggy after that, and yet, it was as if she simply blinked, because the young beauty found herself standing on that same baseball field as before, only now the sky was totally clear. What the? Bulma! Crystal blue eyes barely had a chance to look around, catching the briefest glimpse of a hobbling Yamcha before a blinding light enveloped their owner and everything seemed to vanish again. Poor Bulma was starting to get a headache, so when she could see again, the heiress forced herself not to fall on her but as both legs shook like jello. Instead, she blinked rapidly and took slow, deep breaths before taking another look around. She definitely wasn't at the stadium anymore. Oh crap, now what? Why is this happening to me? There was nothing but an endless blue sky as far as the eye could see, though Bulma quickly noticed she was standing on solid ground. Another interesting note was that there seemed to be storm clouds fading away from her position rather than coming closer, and the crack of lightning growing quieter with every second. Now, separately, these things would all make for a confusing puzzle, the pieces never adding up no matter what way you turned them. But Bulma looked at the bigger picture, bringing up memories of why she'd been in that stadium in the first place, and putting it all together into one big chain of events. I died. Those lights were beams of energy, and one of them hit me, which explained that small gap in her memories, and led to Bulma realizing what must have happened next. She'd been revived. Those clouds were because of Shenron, but I don't get it. If someone wished me back to life, then where the heck am I? A gust of wind blew against Bulma's back and she shivered, not used to being up so high. Looking around again, a bit of color caught her eye from the corner, and she turned quickly to see what it could be. What she found nearly knocked her off her feet. He was beaten and bruised, with his uniform in tatters, but he was alive. Kakarot was alive. Why, you beat him, right? Tell me you won, please. Those dark eyes just blinked at her, before Kakarot offered a half-hearted shrug. Ah yeah, that was all she needed to hear. Oh, thank God. Tears welled up in Bulma's eyes as she broke out into a beaming smile. A bit of laughter filled the air, and soon enough Bulma was stumbling across the short gap on weak legs, eager to embrace her hero. For Kakarot it was a strange feeling, being wrapped in Bulma's arms now. His memories couldn't really recall any other time this had happened, but as she buried her face into the nape of his neck, one thing was for sure. He liked it. The feel of her soft skin as their cheeks brushed sent a tingle down through Kakarot's spine and jolted the alien teen's tail into a frenzy. When he tried to take a breath, to calm his quickening heartbeat, it only served to send Kakarot higher into the clouds when he took in a full burst of Bulma's scent. Dizzy, he was so dizzy. Mine. Dark lashes fluttered, and Kakarot's vision filled with spots as every breath came faster and faster. He didn't know what was happening, but a funny feeling had begun to take root in his belly, almost like a fire. Mine. His arms were around her without the martial artist even realizing it, squeezing Bulma to him tightly but not so much that it caused her discomfort. He leaned further into her embrace, snuggling against the heiress' neck before taking another deep breath and swooning. And yet, just as a powerful rumble started to build in his chest, "If you two are finished," growling. The speed at which Kakarot moved boggled Kami's mind and left poor Bulma squeaking as she windmilled her arms to keep herself from falling forward. It was only by taking hold of her friend's powerful shoulders that the blue-haired beauty managed to save herself, though when she felt Kakarot's body quivering beneath her fingertips, Bulma became confused. Goku? Leaning in, she took a look at the younger boy's face, and a pit quickly formed in Bulma's stomach at what she discovered. It's almost like being back at the tournament. His snarl was just as ferocious, the sunlight glinting off Kakarot's elongated canines as the teen's eyes began to bleed a frightening yellow. Bulma swallowed hard at the sight, and barely managed to pull her eyes away to find the source of Kakarot's fury. He's like something out of those weird games some of the guys from school used to play. A hooded robe and walking stick, with clawed fingers the color of wilting spinach. Bulma wasn't too sure what to make of this odd stranger standing before her, but after dealing with the likes of Piccolo she decided they couldn't possibly be any worse. I don't know who you are, but this really isn't the best time to be sneaking up on people. Considering we're standing on my home, I'll take my chances, Ms. Brief. Crystal eyes widened a little as Bulma was taken aback. He sounded so old. But then what the stranger actually said made its way through the girl's mind, and she turned her attention back to Kakarot, who had finished growling but still maintained an unhappy look. So, wait, if you brought me back to life here, that means you know this guy, right? The martial artist shrugged. Not really, but he did help with wishing you back, since Piccolo had apparently destroyed the Dragon Balls while I was gone. So that's what happened to them. It's no wonder they didn't show up on my radar anymore. But wait, how did this guy help then if? And that S when she saw it, there, printed clearly on the chest of his robes in a brilliant red kanji. Kami. God. The Guardian. Bulma's jaw dropped. Oh, yeah, Kakarot scoffed. Apparently this guy is your planet's overseer and made the Dragon Balls. But the really fun part is that he's not even from Earth. What? B but that S. Irrelevant, Kami interjected with a sigh. Besides, I think what you should actually be discussing is your selfishness, Kakarot. Why don't you tell Ms. Brief just what sort of toll was paid to bring her to the lookout? The confusion this created in Bulma was only magnified when she noticed how Kakarot seemed to stiffen at Kami's words. Toll? What are you talking about, Goku? What does he mean? Instead of answering right away and choosing to ignore her use of his former name, the alien warrior glowered at Kami before sneering. What's the point of telling her? If I can't hold you responsible for your actions, perhaps Ms. Brief will. But rest assured, once this is over we most certainly will be heading out to begin your new training. Whoa, Bulma stood to her feet now. You cannot be serious. You're leaving, again? Kakarot looked up at his only friend, saw the pain in her eyes, and felt an unpleasant twist turn his stomach nearly inside out. But why? Deciding to shelve this strange affliction for later, the alien teen decided to first address Bulma's worries. Because apparently someone stronger than King Piccolo is supposed to show up on your planet soon, and Kami wants me to do all the heavy lifting again. Besides, I doubt you want another maniac to attempt taking over your world, Bulma. Well, no. But it'll be fine, I will come back. After all, Bulma bit her lip, the heiress fingers digging in lightly to her folded arms as she looked away from Kakarot. The silence stretched for another minute, with Bulma bouncing around the realization that she would be forced to separate from her best friend for what felt like the 100th time, before finally, all right, go. Just promise me you won't be gone too long? An uncomfortable feeling turned in Kakarot's stomach as he looked up into those crystal blue eyes filled with hope, because the martial artist knew his next words would replace that light with darkness. So maybe, I'll try something a little different. I can't promise that he fought the urge to wrap his tail around her wrist, but I do promise you'll be the first person I see when my training is finished. The smile she gave him could outshine the sun. Good. Then I'll be waiting, so hurry back, okay? Fine, but only because you're being pushy. Kakarot's smirk was reminiscent of his usual cocky facade, but there was a new light in the teen's eyes now. One that lit those dark slates of coal like glowing embers, and as Bulma found herself staring into that soft-end gaze, she felt a pleasant jolt run through her heart and butterflies kick up a whirlwind in her belly. But just as the beautiful girl realized how badly her fingers tingled to caress their way through Kakarot's wild hair, their moment was stolen by an irritated cough. Ahem. Perhaps we could get back to the root of my displeasure, Kakarot's disregard for human life. At once, the alien warrior's charming mask shattered, and in its place was a much more normal scowl as he whirled around to glare at Kami while Bulma blinked rapidly after hearing such a thing. Why can't you just let that go? How important could those people have really been, anyway? Kami's eyes glowed with power from beneath his hood as he countered, "Some of those you selfishly sacrificed were children, Kakarot. Younglings who had their whole lives ahead of them." Big talk from someone who already admitted King Piccolo's whole reign of terror was their fault. Bulma watched her planet's guardian jerk back at the alien martial artist's words, before seeing his knuckles tighten around his staff in fury. It was easy to see that Kami planned to retort, but Bulma wasn't having it. "Now hold on. We'll get to how that freak was apparently your fault, but will one of you hurry up and explain to me what all this stuff about Goku is supposed to be about?" Her eyes shifted between the monkey-tailed boy and deity, while Bulma firmly planted her fists on her hips. Kakarot sucked his teeth at the sight of the beautiful girl's features screwed up into an increasingly menacing glare, and after scratching his head, decided to simply come clean. "Besides, if I don't, I'll never get to start this new training." Yet even with this thought, there was a part of the alien teen that seemed uncomfortable with Bulma being upset with him. Deciding he would explore these new feelings later though, Kakarot pushed down his oddly beating heart, and turned his full attention on Capsule Core Heiress. When Kami recreated the Dragon Balls, he made them stronger. Now they grant 2 wishes, instead of just 1. "Something else you don't know is that it was my attack that killed you, Bulma." He tried looking her in the eye, but found it impossible the longer he talked, until finally Kakarot could hardly even manage to stare down at Bulma's shoes as he spoke. "I was so angry, so furious, when it seemed like my training with Korin wasn't going to be enough, that I started losing control again. After we moved beyond the stadium, I fired off a key storm to draw Piccolo out of hiding, and it worked, but it cost me you." The girl's lips parted at the revelation, her eyes wide as she felt the strength of her body start to leave her. "Your death was my fault, and when I learned the truth, when I thought there was no way to bring you back, I didn't know what to do until Kami told me about being able to recreate the Dragon Balls. I even agreed to defend the planet because he promised to help me get you back. Yet not once did I ever tell you to use the second wish to bring the girl here, rather than reviving all those lost before your battle, Kakarot." "I was getting to that," the boy snarled as he looked up at Kami, his fists clenched tightly as he gnashed his teeth. And then Kakarot turned back to Bulma, but another nauseating twist took hold of his gut as he quickly took note of her confused, searching stare. "You really didn't wish back Roshi, or the others?" "Why? I did wish back everyone," he countered, "or at least, every life taken by my own attack. But after that I can't explain it. There was this feeling, and I just wanted to be sure you were really alive." Bulma, her friend's eyes had ducked to look off into the clouds, but Bulma could clearly hear Kakarot's raw emotion in every word. His confusion, his sincerity, and it touched the female genius's heart to know Kakarot really did care about her. "But he did sacrifice hundreds of lives. But he wanted to see us, he needed to." This left Bulma's cheeks dusted a faint pink as she bit her bottom lip. His reasoning was sweet, even if Kakarot himself couldn't see it, but the martial artist's method was something Bulma couldn't be comfortable with. Unfortunately, the young alien wasn't keen on giving her any more time to think about it. "There," he spat at Kami, "you got what you wanted, now let us go. I'm supposed to be training for some great threat, but you'd rather have me talking about feelings. It's no wonder your pathetic planet's always in danger." One look and Bulma knew the walls were up. Whatever emotion, whatever kindness and vulnerability Kakarot had been willing to share with her was gone now. But even as she felt a twinge of sorrow that their moment was over, the girl also found she was upset at Kami for being around to ruin it in the first place. "I think I need to lay down, this whole situation is just way too stressful." She was pulled from her thoughts, however, by Kami's sigh. "Very well, I can only hope King Kai is able to curb that mouth of yours. Follow me." With eyes bulging as the other two began walking away, Bulma squealed after them to wait for her. "How the heck am I supposed to get home?" At the same time, another young woman could be found walking through the forests near her own house. Narrow, pine-green eyes scanned their surroundings with every step while keeping the barrel of a submachine gun on a perpetual swivel. "No way are those scaly bastards gonna get the drop on me," she growled. The woman continued on until her ears caught a familiar sound: running water. Letting a little tension drain away, she quickened her pace until a clear blue stream was in sight, and then the woman sighed. "Someday we'll have enough money for a real house, then we won't have to do all this anymore. Maybe, if you quit stealing, we'd have saved up enough for that by now." Ignoring that thought, and tying back her luscious, blonde hair with a red ribbon, the young woman was about to get to work pulling a bucket from the backpack she carried, but then, crash! A body came stumbling out of the woods on the river's other side. What the hell? The only thing stopping a spray of bullets was when she noticed that whoever had interrupted her was human. Taking a step back, the blonde's first instinct was to turn and leave the stranger to their fate, but a sudden nagging sensation in the back of her brain put a stop to that. Wait, what if he is hurt? Then that is even more reason to ditch him. I don't have a lot of ammo left. Why no? What if he was followed? But what if he wasn't he? We should at least make sure he is all right. Growling to herself, the blonde stomped her foot against the ground before giving in. Fine. But only because you're starting to pout. From there those steely green eyes did another quick sweep of the area, before their owner hopped across the rocky tips of peaking boulders to reach the fallen man at the other side of the river. Keeping her eyes open for danger, the blonde knelt down and quickly rolled the stranger over, only to reel back at what she discovered. Holy shit! Oh my! Bruises new and old littered a body of solid muscle, leaving the man a kaleidoscope of midnight purple, dark blue, and fading yellow. Blood crusted over open wounds while a thin trail leaked down from his bald head and over his closed eyelid. One particularly nasty set of claw marks could be found wrapped around the stranger's side, just under his ribs. Yet despite it all, there was still the obvious rise and fall of a heartbeat. My God, we have to help him. For once the blonde didn't argue. There was no telling how long he'd been out in the woods in such a state, so there wasn't any time to lose. Carefully lifting the beaten man onto her back, the woman hurried back towards her cabin, all the while hoping she could get the stranger patched up in time. Krillin wasn't sure just how long he sat in that bunker, he just knew that every second there meant another second he got to live. But then, is it really living? Weighted down by fear, shackled in place by the mean thought of what might be waiting out in the world for him, to the point he was too frightened to even watch a sunrise. Was that really living? You used to call yourself Goku's rival. Just remembering Bulma's last words to him was like a punch to the throat, because she was right. He wasn't a fighter, he was a coward. All I've ever done is run away, Krillin lamented. First from his home, because no one would support his dream of being a martial artist, then Orin Temple after he realized just how hard the training turned out to be, and now this. He could help people, had already helped people, but instead the teenage martial artist was choosing to let hundreds more suffer because he was too afraid to stand up for them, too afraid to try and make a difference, even though a normal girl like Bulma is fully willing to sacrifice herself without a second thought. Krillin felt sick. His knuckles popped as he gripped his knees tight, muscles tensing with the young man's building sense of self-loathing. What would Master Roshi think of him? Krillin didn't have to think about it for long, he already knew the answer. His sensei would be ashamed. As a man who valued life, there was no doubt in Krillin's mind that the turtle hermit would have never looked at him the same if he'd seen the cowardly display Krillin had put on in front of Bulma earlier that day. Damn it! Tears stung the former monk's eyes now, and his chest heaved violently with barely contained sobs. How can I call myself a real martial artist if every time things get rough I'm the first one to turn tail and run? An image of Roshi's lifeless body laying at Piccolo's feet bombarded Krillin's memory then, before suddenly switching out the old man with Bulma, and in the heat of the moment Krillin leaped to his feet. Well, no more. I'm done letting my fear rule my life. I'll prove that Master Roshi was right to take me on as his student, and make him proud. The young man's nerves were jittery with adrenaline, his hands shook almost violently, but there was a new fire to be found in the depths of Krillin's onyx eyes that spoke of conviction and purpose. So much so, that even with his heart pounding against his chest, the bull teen took his first step towards the hallway in days. Bulma's family had built a rather large shelter under their spacious home, one that housed a number of private rooms along with a well-stocked supply of food and a small section separated for medical needs which currently housed Lapis and Lazuli. To reach the house itself, one had to walk through a single, narrow hallway before being scanned and disinfected by a bio-chamber that ultimately led to a ladder. Krillin was just about to pull open the door to the aforementioned chamber when it came flying open and smacked him in the face. Gah! Crap! Falling onto his but the young man held his throbbing forehead while noticing that whoever had just spoken was female, and the voice sounded familiar. Krillin, are you okay? What were you doing so close to the bio-chamber? Blinking through a small flow of tears, the martial artist managed to make out a head of hair colored like a clear sky and crystal blue eyes brimming with curiosity and concern. Be Bulma? Is it really you? Who? Of course it is Q-Ball, who else would it be? And why are you crying? What happened? Are the twins okay? Noticing she was beginning to get worried, Krillin waved his hand and told the girl to calm down. Lapis and his sister are fine, Bulma. The tears are because you just smacked me with a metal door. Oh, she looked both relieved as well as sheepish, before the mask of curiosity made its way back to the surface. But that still doesn't answer my other question, where were you going? Here the former World Tournament competitor's gaze hardened. You were right, Bulma. I was being a coward, someone my sensei would have been ashamed to call his student after making such a noble sacrifice, so I decided I was done running away and was coming to help you. And wait, where's Yamcha? Bulma winced at the volume of his voice, but Krillin didn't seem to notice, choosing instead to try and peer around her shoulder in hopes of finding the former bandit. Yes, fine, don't worry. In fact, Piccolo's gone. Krillin Goku came back. He beat him. Now the young fighter's look of concern shifted to one of shock and awe, and Krillin's jaw dropped to the floor, pulling a slight giggle from Capsule Core Heiress. That's right, she teased while bending down, and just think, you doubted him. Yet even as she spoke, Bulma couldn't help remembering what she'd learned back on Kami's lookout before the deity had teleported her home. All those lives lost for her. But then Kakarot's words, and that look in his eyes found their way to the front of her memory, and Bulma felt her heart speed up again. It was Inky, thanks to Krillin, waving a hand to get her attention, that stopped the swarm of butterflies from fluttering around in joy a second time. Oh, sorry about that. What were you saying? I asked where he was. Did you leave him up in the house? The joy that had been keeping Bulma on her toes deflated, and she dropped to the floor with a heavy sigh. No, he's gone, again. Off to do more training apparently. What? Doesn't he think he should rest first? You just said, I know, the young woman groaned, but Kami said that there is supposed to be some terrible evil coming, and only Goku can stop it. Krillin blanched, his breath catching in his throat. Another one. Already? When does the Earth get a break, Bulma? She could only shake her head. I don't know anymore, Krillin, but one thing is for sure, next time I won just get in Goku's way. Now come on, we should check on Lapis and Lazuli and see if they're alright before going back up top. It was hard to do with his body so stiff now, but the bald teen managed to scramble to his feet and follow after the genius inventor when she began to walk away. Catching up, they walked side by side for a moment before something clicked in Krillin's memory. Wait a second, did you say Kami? Achoo! Why no, it's a bit silly to think that a deity can catch something as silly as a human cold. Which is why I know I don't have one. Your friends are talking about me. Kakarot lifted a curious eyebrow. So then the twins are wiry, Bulma? I suppose that shouldn't be much of a shock. They are, Kami confirmed, though I meant the young bald one, Krillin. He and Ms. Briefs are actually about to discover that Lapis and Lazuli are in good health. They should even awake within the week. Something I won't be around for, Kakarot mused as he walked with the Guardian of Earth into what Kami called the check-in station. There was an uncomfortable feeling in his gut as he thought about that though, being away during such a time that Lazuli would have probably liked to have him around. However, this just brought back the same confusion as when Kakarot had been reunited with Bulma, and it sparked a sense of agitation. What was happening to him? Why did he care this much? And why did it feel as though Kami were looking at him funny? Unfortunately, these questions would be left unanswered, as the pair finally stepped up to a very large desk being manned by an enormous ogre. His red skin clashed horribly with the striped, indigo suit he wore, and Kakarot also found the giant's hat to be a bit silly. Who the heck is this clown? Large, beady black eyes shifted up from stacks of paperwork, and Kakarot caught a gleam of familiarity when they landed on Kami's hooded form before a set of bushy eyebrows lifted. Kami, what a surprise! The boom of his voice nearly rattled Kakarot's bones. I wasn't expecting to see you today. What is the occasion? Well, King Yima, I've come before you today because King Kai has requested that I bring this young man to the other world for special training. It became apparent that Yima couldn't see him from his seat when the ogre was forced to lean forward and peer over the lip of his desk to get a look at Kakarot. However, what the alien martial artist wasn't expecting was for King Yima's squinting gaze to widen into a look of surprise. Well now, that is something I never thought I'd see again. Where did you find one of them, Kami? I thought his kind was extinct. Kakarot's own dark eyes narrowed. Actually, sir, he crashed to Earth as a baby and was cared for by an elderly man named Gohan before his fairly recent demise. Really? An Earthling raised him, I must have missed this Gohan in the crowd then, because I don't remember sending him off. Just like how you both seem to be forgetting that I'm standing right here. So if you're going to talk, do try and keep in the loop, because I would very much like to know what you're talking about. Both sets of eyes drifted over to where Kakarot was standing with his arms folded, and a scowl on his face. Sharp, angry onyx eyes glared up at Yema despite their owner's fatigued state, and the ogre could feel how much heavier it felt just to breathe. But this only made him angry. "You're definitely one of them. Your manners are atrocious, boy. Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" With no time to rest, and hunger gnawing at his belly, the young martial artist was at his limit. He could feel the way his tail bristled, and let it unwind to trash about while clenching and unclenching his fists. "Why should I care? It's you guys who want my help. So either explain to me who they are, or point me in the direction of this King Kai, because I refuse to stand around all day listening to you two go on like a pair of old women." Kami immediately sensed the building power inside King Yema, and saw how his already red face was beginning to turn purple with fury, so Earth's guardian quickly grabbed Kakarot's shoulder before beginning to steer him away. "Ah. Yes, well, it was good to see you, sir, but it seems we need to be going now. Come Kakarot, I'll show you to the beginning of Snake Way, and you can begin your journey." The boy allowed himself to be guided, but he kept an eye on Yema for as long as possible, until they were around the corner and the ogre could no longer be seen. Then, Kakarot pulled himself away and sneered at Kami. "Journey? What else do I need to do? Where is King Kai?" His planet sits at the end of Snake Way, a long and winding path that any who wish to be trained by him must endure. "That wasn't part of the deal," Kakarot huffed, once more crossing his arms. "Yet it must be so. Otherwise I fear you will not have the power to defeat what is to come." "Something else you haven't told me yet," Kami sighed, bringing a set of clawed fingers up to rub at his forehead. However, this gave Kakarot his first real look at the deity, and he noticed something very interesting about the Guardian's hand. It looked familiar. He'd seen it before, fought against it, had those claws wrapped around his throat. Gritting his teeth, Kakarot hissed at Kami. "In fact, I'm getting a little tired of being left in the dark about a lot of things. Why don't we start with why you need to wear that hood?" There was no missing the way Kami's entire body seemed to freeze. "Bingo! What difference does it make? Why are you so interested in what I look like?" "It's the mission that matters, Kakarot." "So you say," he shrugged, "but something tells me that this mission has a lot more to do with you than you're telling me." The hooded guardian groaned. "Aren't you the one who said they didn't want to waste any more time? Because this certainly feels like one to me." Flaring his nostrils against Kami's use of his own words against him, Kakarot bit back a growl before conceding. "Faye, whatever. Just know that after this is all over I will get my answers, either from you, or this so-called evil. Now come on, show me this Snake Way so that I can get started. I always hate coming down here. The stench alone is enough to make me never want to eat again. Who the heck designed this place, anyway?" Passing another river of blood, the horrible smell was easy to identify thanks to sightings of rotted corpses floating in its depths. Black pointed slippers tread quickly over barren rock and dried soil, careful not to step on lingering bone fragments or kick any skulls lying around. Looking out past his dark sunglasses, a portly figure rolled his eyes at catching glimpses of more souls hardening into Erinius eggs. "Oh great, more ogres." Because that's south what this place was missing. Somewhere off in the distance, a malevolent roar vibrated through the air, and the wanderer stuck a blue finger in his ear to make it pop after being closed off by the noise. "Just a little longer, and then I can get out of here. That kid had better be worth all this trouble, or else Kami can kiss his spot at my poker night goodbye." It took him another minute of walking, but finally he came upon the bottom slope of a hill, and looking up revealed a series of homes built from stone and carved diligently into domes. "It's about time," he sighed. Baba hadn't thought to tell him just how far he'd have to walk. However, before another step could be taken, a tingling sensation nagged at the back of his skull and drew the blue wanderer's attention towards the skies behind him. Two men, both short and stocky, with one holding more weight in his middle, came down from a bleak and cloudy horizon and touched down a few feet from the portly stranger. Armor covered their torsos, but left the men's large shoulders and lower bodies open. The one with a big belly seemed to wear animal pelts beneath his armor, while his partner had on a pair of heavy-duty dark blue combat pants. Over their shoulders they carried large carcasses with wide wings harvesters. And a note of intrigue flickered over pudgy facial features at the discovery. "Who are you, and what do you think you're doing around here? This territory's been marked already, bub, or hadn't ya noticed?" With his thin mustache, the heavier of the two men's gruff facade was completed thanks to the odd inflection in his voice. It wasn't deep, so much as accented. "Ah yes, I am aware, in fact that's precisely why I've come. I was hoping to speak with your leader, if he is around. About what wasn't he expecting any visitors? It was the other one who answered this time, and those hidden eyes looked beyond dark lenses to catch a set of scars across the balding warrior's forehead. Thankful that his shades hid the rolling of his eyes, the blue wanderer simply shrugged. Oh, not much, I just have someone he might be interested in meeting is all. Mr. Mustache scoffed. Heh, right, like we've never heard that one before. Look pal, if this is another one of Goz and Mez's stupid attempts to take over our turf, I suggest you go back and tell them you don't want any part of it, otherwise I'll just blow you away right here and now. A snort-filled laughter was the wanderer's response. You think that's funny? Alright, that's it, no one laughs at me and gets away with it. Shugesh enough. The power that had built in Shugesh's palm faded quickly, and there was no way of missing how his partner twitched at the harsh female voice that called to them from the top of the hill. Peering up through dark lenses, that voice was discovered to belong to a woman of both enticing beauty and deadly fury, both of which were found in her opulent indigo gaze. Finely toned arms were tense as their owner stood to her full height, hand on her hips, glaring down at the trio of men at the foot of the hill. You two hurry up and get those harvesters up here so Jine can finish dinner. Everyone's getting tired of waiting. It was a funny sight to see two grown men shake under the weighted stare of such a small woman, but noticing the widely thrashing tail and building pink aura, the pot-bellied stranger decided he could understand their fear. Siang women were quite frightening in their day, which was probably why he felt his own shiver of discomfort when those purple orbs settled on him. As for you, what do you want with Bardock? As he watched Kakarot begin his journey down Snake Way, Kami couldn't help sighing, his shoulders sagging under the weight of knowing that Earth's greatest hope hinged solely on someone as unruly and arrogant as the teenage Siang. Yet it must be so, otherwise there will be nothing to stand between Piccolo's reincarnation and the planet's desolation. I only hope that when this is all over, we Haven T simply traded one tyrant for another. Eager to rid himself of these troubling thoughts brewing in his brain, Kami turned from Snake Way, and hurriedly descended a small set of steps before trekking back through the hall that would return him to King Yema's office. And yet, the cloud of foreboding only seemed to grow darker and more oppressive, until Earth's guardian was struggling to breathe or even swallow the ball of nerve swelling in his wrinkled throat. Clawed fingers dug into gnarled wood, and Kami's yellowing fangs were bared as he forced himself to keep walking. The minor deity was determined to make it home. Just a little further, he rasped. Sweat had begun to bead over his creased forehead, and Kami pulled back his hood in an effort to alleviate the intensifying heat. Surely, once I'm back on Earth these feelings will fade, with the help of some meditation. He could see the end of the hall now, catching sight of Yema sitting at his station through the archway, but a glance at the ogre's expression halted Earth's guardian in his tracks. Pinched eyebrows, fidgeting hands that were twiddling their thumbs, and eyes that seemed to find the polished top of their owner's desk to be the most interesting thing in the cosmos. Seeing Otherworld's most powerful ogre seated like a child caught with a cookie jar filled Kami with dread, and his knees began to shake at the implications of such a sight. However, with only one way back to Earth, the elderly god forced himself to keep moving. Although once he cleared the hallway, his heart stopped, and a deep desire to puke punched him in the stomach. Ah, there you are, Kami. I was wondering just how long you intended to keep me waiting. Flinching at the undercut of displeasure in every word, Earth's guardian leaned heavily into his staff and dropped his gaze to the floor. Supreme Kai, this is unexpected. To what do we owe the pleasure of your visit? You may be a fool, but do not think of me the same. You know why I'm here, Kami. Surely you haven't forgotten the last time a deity meddled in mortal affairs, so what deformity do you suffer from that would make you think it's okay to do it again? Does the balance of the macrocosm truly mean so little to you? Big, yellow eyes squeezed shut and Kami quickly shook his bald head. No. Of course not, my lord, yet your actions say otherwise. It felt to Kami as though his tongue were swelling in his mouth, and he snapped his lips shut as he struggled to swallow. Shin's words were calm, but they were cold and precise, cutting the guardian down like the universe's sharpest metal. Lord Zeno has already allowed you to create the Dragon Balls, and even that is a kindness the Omni King nearly denied you, until your other half destroyed them. Kami's green skin felt warm as he was flooded with shame, and the deity could only nod his understanding. Ironic, isn't he it? That a dark force, determined to take over Earth, winds up saving it in his cruelty. Yes, sir. I'm glad you understand now. Look at me. It took all of Kami's strength to pry open his eyes, and he nearly fell over pushing past the weight of the Kaioshin's aura to do as commanded. The trip up from staring at pointed boots to ceremonial blue robes, and finally into Onyx Eyes was a short one, yet Kami felt as though his voyage took eons. Shin's youthful face was nearly impassive, with only a slight inward turn of his thin eyebrows to indicate the supreme Kia's displeasure. Those dark, coal-black orbs stared arduously at their prey though, and left Kami feeling as though he were the one being looked down upon, despite towering over the ruler of Universe 7. This is the last time you will interfere. I've already spoken to Korin as well as Yema, and made sure they understand the consequences of disobeying my orders, so that just leaves you. A Supreme Kai was killed the last time we gods let our guards down. That won't be happening again. Or else Earth will need a new guardian, and we'll be finding another ogre to man the check-in station. Is that clear? Sea Crystal, my lord. Good. And then he was gone, taking his overwhelming power with him, leaving Kami to finally fall to his knees. The Guardian of Earth gasped for breath as his staff clattered to the floor, and a loud slam echoed through the check-in station from Yema dropping face first into his desk. Kami, what did you do? The Ogre King's voice was small and shaky as he trembled violently in his seat. Large, red fingers buried themselves in a manet of black hair, and Yema bit his lower lip in an effort to stifle a wave of incoming sobs. It was the only way I had to protect my planet, yet, even as he said this, Kami struggled to keep his own body from shutting down. Black spots filled the Guardian's vision and everything else grew fuzzy while that earlier nausea finally won out. The stench of bile filled the air, stinging Yema's nostrils and nearly pushing him to throw up as well, but the ogre managed to fight this feeling before calling in his secretary. CL, clean that up and help Kami to the bridge so that he can go. Kami, I'm sorry, but this is the last favor I can do for you. I can't help the Earth anymore. Please understand. Earth's guardian struggled to his feet with the aid of calloused, blue hands before steadying himself using his staff. Wiping away the stray vomit, Kami shuddered against the terrible aftertaste before nodding. I understand, Yema, and I'm sorry to have dragged you into this. Hopefully you'll forgive my foolishness in time. For now though, I'll leave you, and hope Lord Shin does not change his mind. Goodbye, old friend. With that, Kami was soon led out of the check-in station, leaving Yema alone at his desk. And in that ensuing silence, the ogre finally allowed himself the chance to reach into a single drawer, pull out a large bottle, then guzzle mouthfuls of burning alcohol before falling into another heap. Fenri! He hollered to his secretary. Get Pikuhorn on the line, and tell him to come see me. I need him to take over the sorting for a few hours. Pulling off his helmet, Yema lifted himself out of the leather chair and wiped away his tears with a heavy sniffle. I can't possibly hope to deal with the souls waiting to be checked in right now, so instead, he let the station's guardian do it for him, while Yema stumbled his way out and towards the bridge. Just a few hours at home, he reasoned. And then everything will be all right. I just need a little time to myself, that's all. Yet, in spite of this optimistic thinking, Yema would find it hard to rest when he sat down at home. Instead, his mind would be full of horrifying mental images of what it would actually be like to simply not exist. Back on Earth, as the two deities were struggling to rest, Tien Shinhan found he was fighting to return to the land of the living. His body ached terribly, and there was a predominant pain streaking over the martial artist's chest, with both afflictions silently screaming at him to let that wonderful white light pull him away. But he couldn't let it, not with Tao's killer still out there. So, the young fighter tightened his closed eyes, pushed back against a heavy wave of drowsiness, and forced himself to swim up into consciousness. Even with the weight settled over his eyelids, Tien finally managed to flutter them open, and welcomed a world blurred by hazy vision. However, even in his rattled state, the student of the Crane School still managed to make out that he was not in a familiar bedroom, despite feeling his entire body sunk into a plush mattress. Where am I then? The last thing I can really remember is a flash, and then Tien's mental eye was filled with images of something big, green, and scaly that smelled of all things foul. The sinister look in its beady eyes as it licked its lips, the stench of its breath. Tien grit his teeth against this memory before trying to push it back. I ran away like a coward. I'm a disgrace. However, the rush of negative feelings brought with it a wave of dizziness, and almost immediately Tien was fisting the sheets beneath him in an attempt to ground himself as he rode it out. NRGH. Damn it. He hissed through clenched teeth. But because of the spinning agony, the martial artist failed to hear a female voice utter noises of surprise, or clinking dishes as they were left in a sink. Instead, Tien felt as though he were about to pass out again, as his body seemed unable to adjust to the onslaught of mental and physical attacks against it. Then, remembering his training, the young warrior tried to take a slow, steady breath. Meditate, he told himself. Focus. Don't let this beat you. It's your own body, damn it. You're in control. Yet despite his resolve and the training, Tien quickly found himself unable to center himself. His condition was one he'd never really experienced while trying to focus the pain and inner turmoil, leaving him totally off balance. It was so unlike his lessons with Master Shen. Tien could feel the increased beat of his heart, sensed how it might either explode or send him into cardiac arrest if he didn't do something, but the young man simply could not calm down. No. This can't be where it ends, not when I have so much left to do. Come on, Tien Shinhan. Fight it. Why you can't lose here? But where his mind was strong, the warrior's body was weak. It was a chore just to open his eyes again, and the total darkness only made Tien's dizziness worse, which snowballed into intensifying the bald fighter's heartbeat faster until cold. A frigid clash of sensations crashed against Tien's sense of touch, as an avalanche of ice seemed to settle over his burning forehead. The contrast sent the martial artist's heart into a skip, and his eyes were finally forced open, before the jolt passed, leaving behind a gentle current of relaxing waves to pass over Tien's sweaty skin. In his delirium, the Crane School student could only just make out an arm in all his fog, but trying to turn and see where it led was simply too strenuous, and he let out a groan at the effort. Shush, it's all right, you're safe now. The monsters are gone, it's going to be all right. The voice was so close, but might as well have been on the other side of the world for how terribly it distorted in Tien's ears. Yet, he was sure it belonged to a woman, as he knew the gentle touch that left his forehead and traveled to his neck couldn't be from any other creature. What he now knew to be a washcloth trailed slowly over the thick muscles of Tien's throat, stopping above his Adam's apple as he swallowed before continuing, and then carefully tracing the warrior's collarbone. He wanted to ask how she knew Piccolo's army had been defeated. He wanted to know who she even was. But that just feels so good. A brief loss of that cooling sensation left Tien grunting in need, only to sigh as it was quickly returned stronger than before. I just had to wet the rag again, the voice told him. I'm not going anywhere, don't worry. I'm going to take care of you, help you, so just rest. Let your body heal, and when you're strong enough again I'll make you something good to eat, okay? Help. When was the last time he'd ever had that? Tien couldn't recall. Nor were there any memories of being doted on or spoken to so softly. It was strange, yet, rather than put him on guard, the woman's words lulled Tien into a relaxed state far beyond anything he'd achieved with meditation. And with her gentle tone, combined with such tender motions across his chest, the martial artist was soon discovering something he hadn't experienced in a long time: a peaceful sleep. However, back in the remains of Capsule Corp, another young man seemed incapable of finding similar feelings. Lapis sat along the edge of an observation table, staring down at the floor as his twin sister was being checked on by Bulma. The heiress had already given him a clean bill of health, provided the teen waited 6 weeks to train again, and was now telling leisurely about her plans to visit the Ox King. I met him through searching for the Dragon Balls, but after the turtle hermit put out a raging fire surrounding his castle we were all captured by this gross little goblin named Pilaf, and if it weren't for Kakarot I wouldn't be standing here now. But the Ox King's daughter has an interesting bit of technology one wanna try and study, because I think it can help me to be more useful the next time there's trouble. Would you mind if my brother and I tagged along? I've never really seen much of the world, and it'd be nice to get out of here for a while. Bulma's eyebrow arched as she gave leisurely a curious look. Sure, but what about Jingle Village? Don't you and Lapis wanna go home? Well yeah, but my sister wants to see Kakarot again, and she knows that the best way to do that is by sticking close to you. Both girls turned their eyes on Lapis, who had his fingers gripped tightly around both knees and his shoulders tensed with barely restrained agitation. The teen's dark hair, free of its ponytail, spilled around his angled face, casting it in shadows. But this only helped to draw attention to his eyes. Those raw-cut gems, the color of he and his sister's namesake, were brimming with self-loathing, the likes of which Bulma had never seen before, and she struggled to find any words to say as Lapis continued to stew. Leisurely, on the other hand, and what if I am? You don't have to come with us, if you don't want to. I'll be perfectly fine on my own. Like you were fine against that guy who came to kill Kakarot? Feminine features scrunched into an annoyed mask. Is that what your problem is? That we lost? Lapis, my arm still isn't even fully healed, and even at our best we just don't have the same training as some of these other fighters. I thought after the tournament you'd realize that. The only thing I've realized is that I've been fooling myself this whole time. His voice was low and heavy with an anger that left every word blurred by a growl. All these years, struggling to survive and keep us safe, what the hell was it all even for if I keep losing? Oh, come on, no. Lazuli and Bulma both jumped at his abrupt shout, but Lapis didn't seem to care. You know I'm right, Lazuli. I haven't been able to do anything against the enemies we've faced, even before leaving Jingle Village. I had to get someone else to save our home to avenge our mother. Because I was too weak to do it myself. Lapis threw himself off the table, landing with a heavy thud before he began to stalk off in a huff. So if you want to run off on a vacation with Bulma, be my guest, but I'm going to go out and find the strength to make sure no one ever hurts my family again no matter what it takes. As he stormed out, the teen's negative cloud left behind a mist of discomfort that swirled around his sister and Bulma. Lazuli just sighed however, shaking her head as she allowed Lapis to have his fit. You're not gonna go after him? When he gets like this there's no point, just leave him alone for now. He'll get over it. He always does. Right now I just want to get my arm recast, the damn thing is killing me, Bulma. Right. Sorry about that. Yet, even as she went about setting Lazuli's bones and reconstructing the sling that would help them heal, Bulma couldn't help worrying that their decision to leave Lapis on his own was a terrible mistake. At the same time, Krillin was trying to convince himself that what he was doing wouldn't wind up being another big mistake. Rather, the last practitioner of Kame-style martial arts did his best not to break down into tears as he stood before Mutant Roshi's former home. With the waves crashing behind him and seagulls calling from above, Krillin allowed the scent of the sea to calm his nerves as he reached out to pull open the front door. All at once he was hit with the scent of aftershave and dated cologne, that familiar aroma bringing back memories of arduous training regimens. But before Krillin could truly lose himself to those phantoms, he heard a voice. One that nearly broke his already cracked heart. Master? Is that you? His waddle was slow, but excited, with a tone riddled with anxiety and hope. Which was why, when Turtle came scuttling into the living room, only to have his eager face drop into a depressed frown, Krillin had to bite his lip to fight back a sob. Oh, hi Krillin. I'm glad you're okay. Why yeah, I am. I barely got away. That's good. He could sense the desperate desire to ask about Roshi settled on the tip of Turtle's tongue, and how fear of the truth was all that kept it at bay. But then, Krillin couldn't really blame Roshi's oldest companion either. After all, he didn't want to believe it either, which only made what he had to say next that much harder. But the master, he's gone, isn't he? Krillin, tears stung the corners of his eyes. Why yes. I'm sorry. I wasn't strong enough, and he had to save me. It's my fault, Turtle, and I am so sorry. Even through the blur of his sadness though, Krillin could see the sea creature shaking his head before the young man had even finished speaking. No, don't blame yourself, it wasn't anything that you did, or didn't do. Master Roshi's death was King Piccolo's fault, Krillin. It was that monster who took him away from us. I just wish I could have been there with him at the end. He used the Mafuba, Krillin explained as he wiped his eyes. So at least he didn't suffer, that's good. But what happens now? Without the master, what happened to Kame House and the Turtle School? Here, Krillin allowed himself the chance to take a deep breath and collect his emotions, before finding his voice again. Actually, that's part of why I'm here. With your permission, I'd like to become the new instructor for Turtle-style martial arts, and open a dojo so I can teach it to others. Why no, as a way to keep his legacy alive. From his place by the couch, Turtle's eyes grew wide at hearing Krillin's request, and for another moment there was nothing but the sound of crashing waves to break apart an otherwise deafening silence. However, the longer it stretched on, the heavier it became until finally Roshi's last student couldn't take the quiet anymore. I'm sorry, it was a dumb idea, I just thought that. Krillin, stop. The former monk clenched his fists at those whispered words, but before he could turn to fly off in his borrowed capsule car, the teen was stopped by what Turtle said next. I think that would be perfect, and so would the master. If there were anyone he would want carrying on the title of Turtle Hermit, it would be you. Dark, watery eyes shot open at this, and Krillin's lips parted as he finally managed to look Turtle in the face. Their gazes locked, and all the martial artist could find was pure sincerity staring back at him. This time, when it got hard to breathe, Krillin could feel his struggle came from a sudden rush of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. And as he slowly let a smile take over his face, basking in the light at the end of a long, dark tunnel, the young man made a silent promise to share this warmth with everyone he met and protect it with his life. Yet where there is light, darkness is sure to follow. The rhythmic thwacking of skin slapping against wood echoed clearly through a nearly empty gym, and a single woman could be found within, practicing her kata against a Wing Chun dummy. Deep, clear eyes like sapphires were narrowed, and fine eyebrows knitted together tightly as their owner struck again and again at those wooden arms. Sweat dripped down her cheek, once ivory skin now flushed red, and pulled for a moment in the curve of her collarbone before being flung away as she struck out like a serpent with her left hand. A final breath passed the woman's soft lips then, and the palm of her hand sat against that stained wood as she took time to steady her heartbeat. A full hour, and I still can't relax. Maybe some laps will help? Thinking about how amazing a dip in the on-base pool would feel against her heated body, and the water's cold embrace swallowing her whole as she dove in head first, the woman almost allowed herself to believe this would be the thing to calm her anxious nerves. But it's just gonna end the same way, she sighed. I can't relax knowing he's still lying in that damn bed. Running a hand through her violet-led bob cut, the woman scoffed as she started to make her way to the showers. If he saw me like this though, the brute would probably just tell me to get over it. Though in spite of this, a smile found its way onto her face, as she felt a cascade of hot water spray from the shower head and imagined those stern Arctic eyes staring down at her, while Commander Gold's chiseled jaw set itself into a gruff scowl. Lathering her stomach, the woman traced the cut of her abs but replaced slender fingers with large rough hands. That phantom gaze of pure steel softened just enough to see tenderness and love beneath it, and what was once a wry grin became a gentle smile at such cherished memories. Colonel Violet! Are you in there? Then, just like that, they were shattered, and Violet's mood soured. Of course I am, you idiot! Can't you hear the water running? Now what do you want? YAC Mariam. It's out with it already. It's the Commander HES awake. Colonel Violet felt all the breath in her body vanish. A moment later she was forced to lean back against the wall, lest the loss of feeling in her legs force Violet to crumble. She stared at nothing, blinking slowly as she did her best to process this new information. He'd been unconscious for so long it was hard to believe this day had finally come. He's awake? Why yes, Mariam. The doctor is with him now, giving him a checkup as we speak, but from the looks of it Commander Gold is in perfect health. I remembered your orders to be notified immediately, but did I come at a bad time? Alive. He was alive. Her commander wasn't he going to turn into a vegetable? Colonel Violet sucked in a deep breath with this realization, biting her lip as she scrambled to turn off the shower. No, you did exactly as you were told, good work. Now leave me, so I can get dressed, and tell the commander I'll be there to see him shortly. Of course, Colonel. By your leave, then. Dismissed. She listened as his combat boots beat against the floor in a hasty retreat, and only waited until the sounds left the locker room before leaping from the shower to towel off. Grabbing her spare uniform, Violet dressed quickly, but silently cursed the wild state of her hair even as she sped out of the gymnasium and into the hall. It was a route she knew like the back of her own hand, but something about this trip felt longer than any other. What should have been a 5-minute, full-speed sprint seemed to take forever, and Violet's stomach was ready to drop onto the floor just before she turned that last corner. And if anyone noticed her desperate stumble, they either knew not to mention it or accepted it as a trick of the mind, because as soon as their colonel was in sight they found nothing but a perfect example of what it meant to be part of the Red Ribbon Army. Her eyes were sharp, and all emotion had been stripped from the woman's beautiful face, leaving nothing but a lioness of the battlefield in their wake. Moving towards the door, Violet's every step was measured and precise. The woman's muscles were seamless in their motion as they carried her to her goal. An aura of cold ferocity dropped over that hallway like a blanket, thick and stifling, forcing each and every other soldier standing outside the medical bay to step back lest they be brought to their knees under the weight. With one final clap, Violet's polished black boots stopped, finishing their journey, and she could see through bulletproof glass that the news really was true. He really is alive, thank the gods. When those ICD burned into her memory turned on her, it came as no surprise, yet Colonel Violet felt a powerful spark pass through her heart just the same. It took all of her power to actually open the door, but with a heavy swallow that final barrier was pushed aside, and sterilized air soon hit the woman's nostrils along with a faint hint of something familiar. "Commander," she wasn't sure if her voice cracked or not. Though Violet prayed it was just in her head. "It's good to see you up. How do you feel?" Like there's an echo in my head, it's whispering for vengeance. "Tell me, Colonel, was my father really killed or did I dream that?" His voice was low and raspy from lack of use, but Violet's ears still shivered at hearing that deep rumble again after so many weeks without it. Unfortunately, this wasn't the time to revel in good fortune. Her commander asked her a question. After all, he was, I'm afraid. The one responsible was a boy, Kakarot. That was the name I heard in my dreams. What information do we have about him? Before his second-in-command could give her report though, the doctor who'd been charged with the commander's care blustered and pushed himself into the conversation. "Sir, I'm sorry, but this is no time for such things. That bullet just barely missed your heart another half an inch and you'd have died. Please, you need to rest. Rest is for the dead, doctor. I am a soldier, and a son, whose father was taken before his time. What I need is vengeance. Whoever this Kakarot is will pay dearly for what he has taken from me, so unless you have information on him to give me, your work here is done. Leave us." "But sir, now." It never ceased to amaze Violet how her commander could be so terrifying without raising his voice. But then, as she saw him tower over the head physician, with biceps the size of bowling balls and shoulders wider than her entire body, it shouldn't come to a surprise for anyone really. So when the doctor choked on his fear, and scuttled out of the room like a dog with its tail between its legs, there was little Violet could do to keep back a snicker at the skinny man's pathetic performance. "Good riddance." Commander Gold hummed his agreement, leaning forward to rest both hands on his knees. "Yes, and with him out of the way, you can give me your report on Kakarot. What were you able to find?" The switch back to business was as easy as flipping on the lights. Colonel Violet stood just a little straighter and let her hands fold behind her body after she pulled the door shut. "Unfortunately, sir, the men weren't able to recover much about Kakarot besides a few sightings of the boy before Muscle Tower's destruction. It's as if he came out of nowhere. There's not even a birth certificate for the kid. Though he did win the last Tenkaichi Budokai, defeating reigning champion Jackie Chun, and becoming the tournament's youngest title holder ever." Thick, red eyebrows knitted together at the news and Commander Gold's jaw shifted slightly as he turned his gaze towards the floor. "What about those sightings? Was he alone? Does he have any friends, or known associates? He's been seen with the Capsule Corps quite frequently, and it appears the kid has met with the Ox King, while also training under Mutant Roshi before the last World Tournament, which would explain how he won the belt, but to be so powerful that he defeated all of Muscle Tower. At his age? Even I would struggle to finish that fight. What else do we know?" Here, Colonel Violet tensed. "Actually, sir, we weren't able to do any more digging. Roughly 2 weeks ago, the planet was under siege from a monster who called himself King Piccolo. We lost contact with our intelligence team soon after, and haven't heard anything from them since, even though Piccolo seems to have been defeated by Kakarot. I'd wager, based on what you've told me so far." The woman's mouth dropped open, and she stared at her commander wearing a mask of sheer disbelief. "Why, you can't be serious? Gold, he's like 15, and already strong enough to defeat a man who's been practicing martial arts for over 50 years, possibly even longer than that. You and I both know that Roshi and Chun were one and the same, only a complete fool wouldn't have made the connection. Yet Kakarot somehow managed to best a warrior I'd have never beaten in 100 years. His voice was like thunder, booming with mounting fury as the man's entire body tensed. Every muscle coiled, and ice colder than an Arctic glacier were now hot like electric plasma. If a man like Dao can exist in this world, then there is every bit of a possibility that Kakarot is just as gifted, just as powerful, if not stronger. So yes, Violet, I do believe that Earth was saved by a teenager." That sneer trailed off into contemplative silence, with both officers of the Red Ribbon Army quietly digesting Gold's last words. Violet dropped her stiff posture, and after seeing that the halls were empty now, decided it was okay to move over and sit beside her leader. His tan had faded from being bedridden for so long, but the warmth that came off him was every bit as comforting as she remembered. Closing her eyes, Violet leaned into the redhead's burly frame, snuggling as Gold wrapped an arm around her smaller body. So, she broke the silence with a whisper, the Colonel's voice tinted by worry as she spoke. "If he's this strong, what will you do? This kid sounds like he was born to be the perfect fighting machine." Violet didn't see it, but her words set off a spark in Gold's steely gaze, and his face shifted to a look of determined purpose. He knew what to do. "You're right. But just because I wasn't born the perfect warrior, doesn't mean I can't be made into one." She looked up at him now, and as they locked eyes the Colonel realized where the man's thoughts had traveled to. A second later her shoulders dropped. "Is there really no other way? Your father's work was brilliant, but, Gold, that procedure is experimental. It's dangerous." He brought a single hand up to cup her cheek, using his large thumb to wipe away a tear as it fell. "I know, but it's my only chance." Violet laid her own hand over Gold's calloused knuckles, gripping the man's thick fingers with all her strength. "At least practice it on someone else first, please. There are more than enough useless weaklings on base, or even the planet. Use them. Make sure your father's work is perfected before you let someone start cutting you open. Please, Gold, promise me you'll wait until you're sure you'll survive the surgery, because if something happens to you I don't know what I'll do." Staring into those beautiful, glistening sapphire eyes, the Red Ribbon's last commander found himself helpless to deny his Colonel's pleas. "If it'll dry your tears, I'll do it." Violet's eyebrows shot up into her fringe, but just before she could fully break out into a beaming smile, Gold held up a single finger to halt the woman's rush of relief. "But we won't use any of the men under my command. I have a better use for them. I like what you said before, so we'll find volunteers from around the world. The homeless, sick and feeble, prisoners or delinquents. We'll take the rotten apples from the tree and use them to pave the way for a new tomorrow and Kakarot's destruction." That earlier excitement at being appeased turned to a small, powerful fire which settled in the middle of Violet's chest. And as she stared up into those eyes that were burned into her memory, the Colonel felt her heart beat quicker with every tick of the clock. The longer their gazes were locked, the harder it became to breathe, yet the sensation only heightened Violet's growing excitement. When did Gold get so close? She wasn't sure, but the woman found it difficult to care, and soon enough the beautiful Colonel ached to close the rest of that gap. Stretching up without sliding off the table, Violet was practically in the commander's lap, but neither seemed to notice. Instead their eyelids grew heavier with each passing second, until finally both pairs were lost to darkness, and moments later the commander's rough lips came down to capture his Colonel's softer pair in a slow kiss. Yet, in the light of this love, shadows of vengeance and promises of death followed close behind. "Are you sure you're gonna be okay by yourself? What about Kakarot will be back, and I'll see him then, but right now my responsibility of finding Lapis has to come first. He's all the family I have left, Bulma. I know I'm just worried. King Piccolo might be gone, but the world is still a dangerous place, and your arm hasn't finished healing. If something happened to you, it's fine, Bulma, really." The heiress wanted to feel at ease, but something in her heart pleaded for Bulma to keep trying, and convince Lazuli to keep their original plan. Traveling together would already increase the odds of the blonde's safety, plus with their destination being Ox King's castle, Bulma knew there'd be nothing that could really harm them once they arrived. And yet, Lapis had vanished. Disappeared without a trace, only leaving behind a note for his sister that simply said goodbye. Being an only child, Bulma couldn't really understand what the younger girl was feeling, but it was easy to see that Lapis leaving had hurt Lazuli greatly. "Well, if you're dead set on it, then the least I can do is get you started." Here she passed Lazuli a single, red capsule before fishing out a small green card, a speeder, and some spending money. "It's just a loan though, so you'd better bring them back, okay?" "What?" Lazuli's eyes were wide, and she looked at Bulma as if the older girl were crazy. "No. I can't take this, it's too much. If anything, it's not enough. Lazuli, I'm serious, I want you to be careful. Besides, what is the point of all my money if I can't help my friend when they need it? What do you think was in that briefcase Krillin left with?" The blonde chuckled ruefully. "I gotta be honest, I'm surprised to hear you call me that. Are we really that close?" A sheepish grin found its way onto Bulma's face at the inquiry, and she scratched her cheek with an embarrassed giggle. "Hey, you've got a point, but maybe this can be the first step. And when you find your brother, you guys can come to Fire Mountain and we'll go shopping together. I saw the way you eyed my shoe collection. Why no. Now it was Lazuli-'s turn to look flustered, and she turned her eyes away as a sense of warmth touched the girl's cheeks. Very funny. But if you're serious, then I guess we can hang out. Then, Lazuli-'s eyes filled with a challenging fire. That doesn't change anything between us about Kakarot, though I've had to sit on the sidelines long enough. When he gets back, I'll fight you for him with all I've got. For a moment Bulma was flabbergasted. She took a step back and gaped at the blonde who just told her she'd steal Kakarot away, before something switched on deep within. Shock turned to righteous fury, and soon enough both women were nose to nose as Bulma invaded Lazuli-'s personal space. Oh, yeah? Well, bring it on. There's no way he'll even give you a second look after he sees how much I've grown in 3 years. Hey, do yourself a favor and stick to the boys down at the playground. Kakarot needs a real woman, not a middle schooler. Gah! I started high school before my village was turned upside down, I'll have you know. And I wouldn't be so high and mighty about time if I were you, hag. Bulma's mouth dropped to the floor. Ah! How dare you! I'm still in the prime of my youth, thank you very much. I'll hardly be into my 20s. Lazuli used her good arm to flip the blonde hair settled at her shoulders, scoffing playfully at Bulma's indignation. Whatever helps you sleep at night, we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. Let Kakarot decide on his own, and all that. Folding her arms with a huff, Bulma conceded. I guess you've got a point, but that doesn't mean I'll just stand by and let you snatch him away, either. If it's a war you want, it's a war you'll get. And, despite their earlier ferocity, both young women smiled genuinely at each other while Lazuli clicked her new capsule. I look forward to it. So do I, Bulma would think, as she watched the blonde drive away. It wouldn't be until Lazuli-'s speeder could no longer be seen that the capsule corp finally let free her own vehicle. Then, climbing into the cockpit, she hummed along with the engine before lifting off and taking to the skies. Next stop, Fire Mountain. Okay kid, the money came through, so here's the keys. Rent's due every second Tuesday of the month, don't be late. I won tea. Thank you, sir. And then, with the ring of a bell, Krillin found himself alone. Looking around, he took in every inch of his new dojo, from the matted floors to its blank, white walls. You could see the office from the front door, and a shallow hallway that no doubt led to a bathroom, but otherwise, that was it. But that's okay. The bald martial artist smirked, hands on his hips. Because I have a good feeling about this. I will succeed. Yet, with every great journey, Krillin knew that he couldn't stop here. Students wouldn't just show up out of nowhere, he needed to advertise. So, walking over into what amounted to a walk-in closet, the young man got it in his head to make some flyers. Something bright, I think. Maybe a nice font, but one that's not too hard to read. The smile on Krillin's face stretched, touching from cheek to cheek as excitement bubbled in his gut. This is gonna be great. Slowly, that exuberant rush started to tremble, its support shaken at the sight of, well, nothing. No computer, not even a desk. Just empty space, whose walls had seen better days if that chip paint was anything to go by. Krillin's shoulders sagged a little. Oh boy. Buying the ink and paper for them wouldn't be so bad, but getting a computer and printer would take a huge bite out of what's left of Bulma's money. I can't afford that. Slapping his forehead with a groan, the young man's mind raced a mile a minute as he tried to come up with a way out of this first major roadblock. If I try to draw them myself, it'll only make my dojo look like a joke. And I can't really hire anyone to do the flyers who's gonna work for free. Krillin chewed at his lower lip as he began to pace around the tiny office space. It was just as the ticking clock started to drive him up the wall, though, that the martial artist had a hit of inspiration and hurriedly pulled out his cell phone. Then, a few short taps later, Krillin was listening to the line ring. Click. Krillin? What's up? Did the dojo cost more than you thought? Hey, Bulma. No, I'm actually calling you from my new office, thanks again by the way. And I'm really sorry for asking for another favor so soon, but I need some flyers made, and the rental space doesn't have the stuff to get the job done. Would you, no, maybe have a friend who could help me out? Like, an artist? Sure. Actually, my cousin goes to school for art design, and the flyers could be a great addition to her portfolio. You guys can help each other out, would that work? There was no stopping the smile that easily overtook Krillin's earlier look of dejected sheepishness. He nodded so quickly that the bald fighter forgot Bulma couldn't actually see him respond. Ah. Yes. That would be perfect, Bulma. Thank you so much. I owe you $1 million. The heiress giggled over the phone. Nah, that's just what friends are for, Krillin. Besides, even if he and I weren't close, what you're doing in Roshi's memory is really admirable. I'm happy to help any way I can. A dull pain squeezed Krillin's heart at the reminder of his former master, but he managed to keep the hurt from bleeding into his voice as he once again thanked Bulma for her help. Anytime. Okay, so, are you ready? I'll give you her information, and you two can set up a meeting. Ah. Wait, I don't have any paper. Hold on. It would take borrowing a pen from the store owner next door, and writing everything on his hand, but by the time he hung up, Krillin was now in possession of the phone number of Bulma's younger cousin. Her name? Marin. Far into the countryside, another martial artist found himself learning the name of his savior. Tien sat up in bed, staring quizzically at Launch as she smiled at him and gently stirred a bowl of soup. I don't understand, why did you save me? I'm nobody, a total stranger. There's no possible way to know if I would have just killed you after recovering. It was only for a moment, but Tien was pretty sure his caretaker seemed to flinch as if her head hurt. Yet just as quickly, it was over, and the woman was pushing back a lock of navy hair before smiling. You were in trouble, she shrugged. It wouldn't have been right. And with everything that had been going on, there wasn't too much thinking I had to do about how you got hurt in the first place. So, if you're the type of person who puts their life on the line to protect the world from monsters, how bad can you really be? Tien wanted to rebuff her, but Launch chose that moment to lean in with a spoonful of broth and bits of vegetable, leaving the martial artist with no other option than accepting, lest he upset the woman. Besides, she is a good cook, and it'd be a shame to let her hard work go to waste. So, Tien, you must be very strong to have been fighting off those horrible creatures. Would I be right in assuming you're a martial artist? Ah, yes. He answered after swallowing. I've been studying the crane style since I was a boy. I'm currently slated as the dojo's most prominent student. Cerulean eyes brightened as Launch took an excited breath. Oh, wow. I've seen some of those tournaments on television. The people who attend are always so impressive. Have you ever competed? Much of the light that had sparked in Tien's eyes had faded at the question, and his broad shoulders slumped. I was going to, but then my master's brother was taken, and Piccolo attacked. Nothing's been the same since. Oh dear. The young woman's own smile dropped immediately. I'm so sorry. It must be hard losing a loved one. Master Dao wasn't lost. Cold black eyes hardened to cold steel. He was taken. A filthy low life killed him. The crane-style student's biceps pumped with fury, his hands curling into knuckle-cracking fists. Tien snarled as he stared into the sheets, images of Kakarot flashing through his mind's eye and compounding the hatred welling up inside. I apologize, I didn't know. Struggling to keep a hold on his temper, Tien's jaw clenched tightly as he took deep, heavy breaths. It's not your fault. I can't help feeling as though I'm failing Master Dao by letting his killer continue to live. But Tien, what will vengeance solve? That person's death won't bring your mentor back to life. You should report this. Go to the police, and they can. Those fools are useless. Crack, splat, The bowl that carried Tien's lunch now lay in pieces, scattered across Launch's lap as well as the floor, with it spilled and staining her apron. What was that? Tien ducked his head. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to my aura just. I see. Launch blinked down at the mess her guest had made, and there was another moment where she seemed to fight back a headache before speaking again. Well, I'll just go get the broom and dustpan. Although, when I get back, we'll need to have a talk. The martial artist couldn't find it in himself to look her in the eye. Yes, Marem. Tien would then watch as his host took her time cleaning up the broken glass and mopping up any liquid, so as not to stain the hardwood. A heavy blanket of silence fell over them while she worked, one that reminded the young man of those times he'd been scolded by his master. And just as back then, Tien found himself desperate to shatter this imposing atmosphere. Only Launch beat him to it. Once you've recovered, you intend to go searching for Dao's killer, don't you? I do. The lump in his throat denied Tien the opportunity to say any more. He bit his lip. I don't expect you to understand, but because I don't look like I've lost anything, Tien? That's a bold assumption to make. And yet, I'm not at all surprised it's the conclusion you've come to. In fact, I'm glad. It means I'm getting better. I'm sorry, but it's not the same. Tien saw how Launch tightened her delicate fingers around the mop handle and noticed that she pursed her lips to match with furrowed eyebrows. Yet the martial artist still couldn't find it within to concede that, perhaps, he was wrong. Master Dao hadn't been lost. He'd been taken, and Kakarot needed to pay. I see. Those two words brought Tien back from his inner turmoil, long enough to see Launch worrying her bottom lip. If you'll excuse me. Despite her short tone, the beautiful blue-haired woman still made sure to take time and gather her supplies before striding out. Moments later, she could be heard angrily putting them away, muttering to herself, before there was another beat in silence. Tien felt a bit of shame creep into his stomach. Though, those feelings quickly turned to concern when he heard Launch sneeze. Achoo! Hey, are you all right? There was no answer, only the sound of footsteps as his host seemed to make her return. However, Tien picked up that these were heavier footfalls, and that they carried a much angrier woman than the one who left. It was disconcerting, noticing just how different a person could seem with something as simple as their steps. But that wasn't even the biggest surprise. All right, Baldayu and I need to talk. Eyes widening like tiny planets, Tien's jaw dropped to the floor as he beheld a most unusual sight. Launch. Across the country, another surprise was being revealed. Only, this one happened to bring excitement rather than worry. Bulma. You got here so fast. Is my handsome knight here too? Feeling the tick in her eyebrow, the heiress answered quickly. Nope. Just me, he's off training again. Kai's young shoulders slumped at the news, even as her father placed a comforting hand atop his daughter's head. Well then, if not for a play date, what is it that brings you all the way out here? Back to familiar territory, the spark in Bulma's eyes rekindled. I was actually hoping you guys would be willing to let me see the technology used to make your daughter's blasters. While they weren't particularly powerful back in Pilaf's castle, I bet I can make something much more potent if given the blueprints. The Ox King frowned. Those aren't toys, Bulma. Nor were they created for mass production. I had them made to protect Kai. I understand that, but my goal is something similar. I'm not trying to buy them from you, or make them into equipment for the military. I just don't ever want to feel helpless again. Memories of her adventures with Kakarot filtered through Bulma's brain like a movie reel, and she cringed at the realization that she could have easily been slain at any time, and there'd have been nothing she could do about it. Well, no more. Next time, I'll be ready, and he won't have to fight alone. The conviction in those crystal blue eyes seemed to persuade Kai's father, because a moment later he was waving Bulma into their castle. Then I suppose, so long as you promise, there's no harm in letting you take a look. Come on, we keep them in the army while my daughter's at home. With a bounce in her step, and a smile brimming with eager delight, the capsule corp heiress followed Fire Mountain's king into his home with a single thought. This is going to be so much fun. This is so stupid. Kakarot's fury rang in his own ears, even as the warrior's cries faded beyond a sea of bright yellow clouds. Standing somewhere along Snake Way, he snarled at the winding road, wondering just how much longer this trip would take. It feels like I've been running forever. Damn it all. What sort of training is this? I'd better not get there, and King Kai tells me the run was what made me stronger, or I'll blow him to pieces. Letting out a huff, Kakarot dropped to the ground and threw his head back. I'm starting to wonder if this is even worth it. Do I really care that much about the Earth's safety? He knew the answer before he even asked. No, it wasn't the little blue planet that was pushing him forward, rather, a single girl who walked its surface. Kakarot's mental image of Earth doubled, and those two orbs brightened before settling into a smiling face. Bulma. The thought of his first friend sent an odd tingling sensation coursing through Kakarot's tail. Pinching the bridge of his nose, he took a deep breath and flexed his other hand. What were these feelings? Why does thinking about her now make my chest tight? Even talking to Lazuli hadn't elicited such emotion. Those had felt much more primal, by comparison. Yet, not unpleasant, and Kakarot couldn't help comparing the two. With Lapis' sister, there was an urge to have his hands on her, a simple desire to touch and hold the blonde close. To taste her skin and breath in the girl's scent. With Bulma, that gentle smile returned, and a powerful vice squeezed around Kakarot's heart. His tail whipped into a frenzy while something unusual seemed to fill the young teen's stomach. It was an odd, fluttery feeling. One that spread from the roots of his hair to the tips of his toes, washing over every nerve with a strange warmth. A breeze flew by, rustling the alien's spiky locks and cooling his skin, drawing Kakarot's attention to the fact he'd been warm in the first place. Without realizing it, his eyes had closed and a smile touched the martial artist's lips. Blinking rapidly, this was quickly replaced with an all-too-familiar flat, stern facade. What the hell am I doing? I don't have time for this nonsense. With my luck, I'm not even halfway there. Flipping back to his feet, Kakarot's muscles tensed, and with a grunt he was surrounded by a violet aura whose rapid flames were tinted with an ominous black. Ready or not, King Kai, here I come. Shooting into the air, Kakarot soon resembled a shooting star as he sped across Otherworld's pastel pink sky. Dark, onyx eyes hardened into slates of black steel as their owner pushed out another burst of energy, and then all anyone could have seen was a streak of black stretching as long as Snake Way itself. Feelings would have to wait. Kakarot had training to finish. Thick, calloused fingers scrubbed through a long, black manet of spikes. Sitting in his room, the young warrior sighed with an undercut of frustration as he stared across at a set of armor waiting to be put on. The prince had been given yet another assignment, one too large for even his power to accomplish alone, which meant the entire team was needed. The problem? Raditz still hadn't fully recovered from their last mission. His whole body ached, screaming at the Saiyang warrior to rest, yet this luxury seemed to be denied to him in favor of Frieza's insatiable appetite for total control. A sneer found its way onto the Saiyang's face. That horned bastard! You would think, with only 3 of us left, he'd give his best warriors more time to regain our strength before sending us to the front lines again. Heavy hands dropped to powerful knees, and those large fingers squeezed while Raditz clenched his jaw against thoughts of that number 3. Of an entire planet, a full race of people, only 3 remained. 4. The Saiyang's memory was corrected, reminding him of his younger brother. But there had been no word on him other than the planet he'd been sent to conquer, so Raditz wasn't actually even sure the brat was still alive. Better Kakarot than him, though, the young warrior supposed. An image of a face much like his father's came from within the fog of Raditz's mind, but he shook those thoughts away and replaced them with a softer smile as well as kind eyes. To be sent out with the prince is a great honor. I'm so proud of you. This time a grin touched Raditz's lips, and the alien fighter's muscles relaxed, if only for a moment. Thinking of his mother helped push the Saiyang to his feet, and walking across the room, Raditz quickly finished putting on the armor marking him as part of the Cold Empire, the man's scouter being fastened with the utmost care. Staring into his full-length mirror, taking in his brutish muscles and hard face, Raditz found himself gently running a finger over the rim of the device that rested over his left eye. If he was the last of his line, then the Saiyang warrior would make his mother proud, and be a man his father would greet with respect. I must admit, I'm surprised to see you. I'd figured that Lizard's goons would have caught YA by the tail, by now. That's only because you've forgotten who I am. I'm my father's son. Thin, black eyebrows pinched inward. Maybe, but we both know what happened to him. How can you be sure you'll not meet the same fate? Because unlike him, I have a plan. But it only works if enough of us survived the explosion. Is your team with you? Slim arms folded over an armored chest, revealing toned muscle underneath sun-kissed skin. The scaly, green hide used to cover her breasts contrasted well with the woman's bronze skin and helped draw attention to her charcoal eyes. Would they be anywhere else? But, what about you? Don't tell me you're flying around in that big old ship by yourself. And if I am? Matching her pose with his much larger, more physically imposing form, the spiky-haired man gave the woman a curious stare. What is the difference? Small, feminine hands planted themselves firmly over fur-covered hips. Because, dummy, that means there's only 4 of us. So whatever plan you've thought up is probably gonna crash and burn. Dark eyes narrowed, one gazing out behind a red lens. What do you take me for, Corey? Clearly just as one be enough, but there are others. Vegeta's name still spreads across the stars, and descriptions place both Nappa and Raditz alongside him. Oh. Well then excuse me, let me do my math again. So that S7 says against an entire empire. One ruled by a racist, horn-headed demon. Am I getting it right, now? Don't be a coward. Silence dropped like an anvil, and the man's monkey-like tail wrapped itself tightly around his waist as he took note of Corey's body stiffening. A look of shock had barely registered on the woman's beautiful face, before quickly being overcome by a ferocious snarl. What did you just call me? They weren't words, so much as a growl. Something primal that rumbled from deep within Corey's throat. She leaned in, staring up at her fellow Saiyang warrior through thick, dark lashes as every muscle in the alien's body tensed, yet the male refused to back down. I called you what you are, a Koa. SNCK. Barely managing to jump back in time, he avoided being sliced up the middle by a short sword. Chancing a look while her striped pelt fluttered in action, Black Eyes caught sight of a scabbard strapped to Corey's hip. Although, there wasn't much time to consider her unusual taste in combat before she was rushing him with an aggravated sneer. Take it back, Turles, or I'll cut you to ribbons. Despite the overflow of power his scouter picked up, the Saiyang warrior couldn't help grinning as he weaved around each and every strike or thrust of that blade. Some things never change. The end. Thanks for watching. Subscribe our channel for more.